Continuing overnight, frost widely forming under those clear skies and some patches of fog. But eastern Scotland and the far north and west, mostly cloudy. Likewise for Northern Ireland, England and Wales. And in fact, across the east of England, increasingly low cloud will lead to a gloomy start to Thursday, with largely drizzly rain starting to move in from the North Sea, and that will reach parts of the Midlands by dawn, and it's going to be dreary and damp in these areas. Southwest England, similar conditions, but for the west and north of Wales, perhaps some brightness coming through. Likewise for the far north of Northern Ireland, but otherwise Northern Ireland's mostly cloudy. The cloud beginning to spill into southern Scotland as well. But elsewhere across Scotland, where we do have the clear skies overnight, it's going to be a chilly start to the day, and in some spots, once again, temperatures will struggle above zero throughout daylight hours. Some patchy fog persisting in places as well, but the gloomiest skies, I suspect, by now will be across much of England into East Wales as well, with outbreaks of light rain and drizzle. 8 to 10 Celsius in the south, a little milder compared with the recent days, but staying cold for parts of Scotland. Now, by Friday morning, the low cloud in the south and east will be spilling its way into southern Scotland as well as western Scotland and parts of Northern Ireland. So for most of the UK, Friday is a cloudy day. There'll be outbreaks of rain and drizzle as well. But into the weekend, those outbreaks of rain will start to sink south and introduce milder air across the board.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
morning to you. Sara Sharif was failed.
Those are the words of the Children's Commissioner as the parents of the 10-year-old girl were found guilty of her murder.
Well, serious questions now being asked as to how her father was given shared custody of her, despite it being known that he abused her siblings for years.
Angela Rayner will press ahead with plans to prioritise house building in areas of the Green Belt, insisting there is no alternative to large-scale development in the countryside around big cities.
The Prime Minister today meets the European Council President, where he'll hold talks on defence cooperation with the EU.
Thousands of veterans who were ejected from the military because of their sexual orientation or gender identity will be able to receive up to £70,000 each in compensation in order to correct historic wrongs, a 50% rise to the financial recognition scheme.
It's Christmas party season, which also means a few festive faux pas may occur, as we know here at GB News. But how do we deal with them? We'll be joined by an etiquette expert.
Cooking Christmas on a budget? Well, we're going to be joined by TV chef Rosemary Schrager for all of her festive tips.
The Football Association is accused of sports washing following the announcement that Saudi Arabia will host the 2034 World Cup. We're asking, should they be allowed to?
You doing the sport?
No.
What was that? That was a bit sporty, wasn't it?
It was a bit sporty.
That was a bit sporty. OK, OK. We have some sport details. Manchester City are in all sorts of trouble as they lose to Juventus, and Arsenal look very good at the Champions League last night.
Hello there, good morning. Another cloudy and grey day ahead with some rain and drizzle at times. Some brighter weather too. I'll be here later with all the details.
It's just gone 6 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
I mean, I'm quite happy for you to do a debate on the World Cup.
Are you really?
I am.
I'm good.
But no, you're not bothered. You're not bothered.
Have you honestly, you see the stadiums? It's so dodgy. I mean, the whole thing.
Is it?
It's so, I mean, really. I mean, the money it's all about FIFA and their money, and of course, we know what it's like. Yeah. Saudi Arabia and...
Are they going to have to play it in winter?
Yeah. See, they'll have to play it in
it's
January.
Going to mess up the...
Yeah, again. Yeah, that's going to cause trouble in January.
So she's doing a research for this debate.
Absolutely.
I heard it on the radio yesterday, actually, so I was across those.
Christmas parties.
Yeah.
Why do we have office Christmas parties?
For morale.
But it's not morale, is it? Because it's always people just have to do the walk of shame and wear the dark glasses the next morning and...
It's just
knowing... There's always something that goes on, isn't there?
As Kenny Rogers said, again, know when to hold them, know when to fold them. You know what I mean? You have a few drinks, but you've got to know when to stop. But there's always those couple that just go just a little bit too far and you think, oh, dear.
Yeah.
Have you ever found, honestly, in all the years, at a Christmas party, have you ever embarrassed yourself at all?
No.
Have you ever been to one?
I can safely say I haven't.
Have
you?
Yeah. No, I think a few times. I do remember. I mean, this is nothing to be proud of. But I do remember someone telling me once that on the London Underground, this is many years ago, they saw me on the tube coming back from the Christmas party, falling off the chair into the middle of the train, laughing, and then climbing back on. I had no memory
like
of it.
a toddler or something.
Not good.
Yeah, but that's not so bad. That's not so bad. I don't mind the sort of whole getting drunk thing. That's fine. I wouldn't even class that as a faux pas.
OK, fine.
It's the...
What's a faux pas?
The faux pas is when you get overly friendly with a colleague.
Right. OK.
I think that's a faux pas.
What, in a public place?
In a public place, because you're both drunk, and you know it's just a point of regret.
Right. OK.
I think that, and it always happens.
It does always happen.
Always happen.
Because the thing is, it's in offices and where people work. They're obviously going to meet people, and that's where, a lot of romances come from. So then it's the drink that will be there, and then things will happen then.
People who've already got romances in their lives, isn't it?
Oh, really? Yeah.
I don't know what it is about a Christmas party. It seems to be a free-for-all, don't you think? There's always a scandal at a Christmas party.
This is three of us that didn't go to the Christmas party this year.
Go, but yeah. Well, let us know if you've heard any stories, if you've been involved in any shenanigans. at your Christmas party.
Can we just assume names and then it's like blacked out and then the voice is different and then they can tell the truth? That'd be great.
gbnews.com/you'll say.
Yeah, terrible stuff. Right, on to the serious news for you this morning. And after years of what prosecutors called horrific abuse, 3 members of Sara Sharif's family have been found guilty over her death.
Yes, her father and her stepmother were convicted of murder, while her uncle was found guilty of allowing her to die.
The 10-year-old suffered unimaginable violence, with the conviction sparking calls for urgent reform in child protection.
Well, joining us now is former Detective Chief Superintendent of the Metropolitan Police, Kevin Hurley. Good to see you this morning, Kevin. And the details surrounding this case are absolutely horrific, aren't they?
In all of these cases of extreme child abuse, especially ones leading to murder like this, they're shocking. I've dealt with many such cases of child abuse, horrible situation, and you wonder how human beings can do that to such vulnerable children. But tragically, there are people out there who do that. And in terms of how do you stop it, what are the answers? I think we can say there's a few things we can do. That teachers perhaps could play their part in being more observant, looking at the behaviour of children, and we could perhaps provide a support mechanism around those teachers if they do decide to take their concerns forward, because very often it can blow back against them. Similarly, better resourcing of social services who've suffered really grievously from austerity over the last 12, 14 years has resulted in a much denuded social services where they're not so keen to intervene, and then returning, although I don't think there was any real police involvement in this, returning to the police, encouraging response officers to be more nosy. The big people who could help with this, and I've followed this case, there's indications that neighbours and people around the area were aware something bad was going on. And one would hope that if people are concerned and are suspicious, they don't just sit there, they pick up the phone and tell someone, whether it's the police or the local authority, because these children need us all to look for them, look after them.
Well, they do.
And it's incumbent on all of us.
Well, they do, Kevin. They do. The problem with this is that how many times have we had this conversation? How many times? Is it unrealistic to think that this sort of behaviour actually can be stopped? Or do we have to accept that every now and then one of these horrific incidents just is going to happen? Someone is going to find a loophole and be able to behave in this way.
I don't think we should ever accept this kind of behaviour, but equally we need to, as you say, accept this will happen. But I would encourage anyone who has suspicions, children screaming, children continually bruised, continually hurt, sullen behaviour, and they know them because they're a neighbour, a teacher, or even a relative, that they make themselves a little more nosy and actually tell someone that they're concerned. And I think there's another issue here, which is probably council social services need increased funding to return to a position where social workers are perhaps better funded. But in fact, we've seen this 30, 40 years, Victoria Columbier, when was that now? 20, 25 years ago. It kind of goes on, overworked social services, people ignore their suspicions. I mean, the truth of it is, none of us want to think badly of a neighbour or a workmate or someone that we know, but some people have a terrible dark side, like these monsters, quite frankly, have. And as a result, this poor little girl was subject to a life of misery, torture, extreme pain, and God knows how she actually died. I anticipate they'll get some substantial sentences, and quite rightly so. But the thing that really is appalling about this family is I read that when they came back from Pakistan, they paid to come back first class to have one last moment of luxury and fun before they knew they had to face the music. It's a shocking case.
Yeah,
shocking.
It is sickening. The government is considering introducing a ban on smacking children. There's also talks about introducing a homeschool register for children that are educated at home. Is that something that you would welcome? Would that make any difference to these horrific cases that we see time and time again?
Well, a lot of parents at some stage, and sadly we all do, some of us, if we lost our temper with young children, we might raise our hands and immediately regret it afterwards. I don't know how you'd ever enforce that, and I'm not sure that one should, up to a point that moderate correction might be acceptable, although I personally don't really believe in hitting children. But I think on the issue of a homeschooling register, I think probably there is a case for that to be regularly checked up upon. If people wish to school their children at home, then there probably needs to be a regime where a local authority education inspector comes round to check on the standard of education of the children principally, but also with the stopgap of safeguarding their well-being. Again, it comes down to everything. Where is the money going to come from for local councils to employ people working for the education authority to come and deal with that? You know, it's all very well us saying that, but the British economy is really struggling, or we've seen slight improvement, but, you know, quite frankly, the police are a shadow of what they once were. We're hearing that the Commissioner of the Met saying they've had to cut huge numbers of elements of the police if the current funding budgets go through. And the thing that really alarms me about that, is relevant to child protection and everything else, is the fact that the forensic investigation budgets are going to be cut. You know, these are all the result of where the economy is at this moment. We complain that the police don't catch enough burglars or robbers or people who violently assault women. Well, of course, if they're going to get cuts now to DNA and fingerprint investigative basic capability, don't be surprised if things get worse. And then I'm afraid the current government, whoever is in charge of it, never mind Keir Starmer, have got a real problem while we get to grips with the fact there is not enough money for some essential public services, which is why I think we all need to be vigilant and look out for each other if we're concerned about the welfare of a child in these kind of circumstances, crying all the time, they appear to be bruised or they're not going to school. Perhaps we should just inquire a little bit more ourselves, or if we can't, tell someone, pick up the phone.
Yeah, no, well, look, it's a good thing to reiterate, I think. Kevin Hurley, good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a horrific case, isn't it? Awful.
It's beyond words.
Yeah.
Beyond words.
It really is.
Right, so Keir Starmer is vowing to override blockers and put builders first as he prepares to unveil sweeping changes to the planning process.
Well, the new plans could mean increased developments on the Green Belt, so the government has pledged to prioritise brownfield sites.
Well, the plans have already been criticised. The Shadow Housing Secretary, Kevin Hollinrake, accusing Labour of bulldozing through the concerns of local communities.
But the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, says it is a landmark overhaul.
We think this will streamline the system because there's far too much delays at the moment, and therefore by having the policy framework nationally and the local plan means that you can plan for the houses in the place where local people have identified they want it, and more importantly make sure we deliver the infrastructure alongside that.
Well, the Prime Minister is continuing what he's calling a reset of relations between the EU and the UK.
That's as Sir Keir Starmer prepares to meet with the European Council President, Antonio Costa.
All right, let's talk to our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, who's here. Good to see you this morning. Are we cozying up to the EU?
Well, the Prime Minister has spent a lot of time in European capitals, hasn't he? Well, he spent a lot of time out of the country since he became Prime Minister. Lots of visits to Brussels, to Paris, to Berlin, and today he's hosting the EU Council President. Here, clearly, the government wants a closer relationship with the EU. They say they're all about growth. The growth projections that we've had with the budget are pretty anemic. But, of course, the question is, what is the EU going to want in return? Because they're not going to give us something for nothing, are they? So we know that they're very keen on some sort of youth mobility scheme. The government have said That's not on the table, but it does sound like there may end up being something, whether it's 1 year or 2 years, limited, but something. So they will be talking about shared challenges, trade, Syria, you imagine, defence, migration.
Defence is an issue,
of course, with what's happened in Syria, and worries that, OK, it's great for the Syrian people that Assad has gone, but it could be that what replaces him may not be good either. And in fact, there could be jihadists who are freed, potentially making their way across Europe in our direction.
Let's look at news at home now and changes to planning rules and some suggestion that we will see building on parts of England's green belt.
Yes, so this is going to be unveiled this morning by the Deputy PM, Angela Rayner, and the Prime Minister. They made 1.5 million homes, building those one of their big pledges, milestones, first steps, whatever you want to call it, which is going to be incredibly difficult. But what we're hearing now is councils will have mandatory targets. They're likely to focus the greatest number of homes being built in areas like the southeast, where it is most expensive, so wherever housing is most unaffordable. Brownfield sites, the thinking is, if you apply to build on brownfield sites, it will be an automatic yes. Green belt, it sounds like we will hear which bits of the green belt may be designated grey belt.
Which is new.
Yes, but there will be golden rules, apparently, which will require developers to provide the infrastructure. So it's no good just plonking an estate of houses if you haven't got the schools, the doctors, and so on and so forth. So, of course, it's to be welcomed. We have a huge housing crisis. Successive governments have failed to build anything like enough houses. If you can't get a house, if you're still in rental accommodation in your 30s, you're less likely to get married, you're less likely to start a family. It has a big knock-on effect. Of course, the fact that nearly 1 million people more came to the UK than left it the last year or so has an impact on that too. But there's going to be a fair amount of local resistance. The Tory shadow housing minister saying that Labour are going to bulldoze through the concerns of local communities. But Labour's attitude seems to be increasingly that if you don't like it, it's probably just going to be tough.
Catherine, thank you. Well, let's talk to Deputy Editor of Spiked, Fraser Myers. Morning,
Fraser. Good morning.
I mean, look, there is an argument to say we need more housing. Of course there is. But the attitude of saying, well, if you don't like it, hard cheese.
I think one of the problems is that we talk about the green belt. It sounds very nice. It makes people think of rolling hills and beautiful untouched countryside. But one thing that the government has identified is that there's a lot of areas that are classified as green belt that no one would imagine to call it that. So there's pockets of lands that have things like disused petrol stations or, wasteland that are still, for some reason, classified as green belt. This is what this new grey belt definition is supposed to tackle. But there also is a fact that, where is the demand for housing? It is on the outskirts of our cities, on the outskirts of places where people will already live, where they already work. And unfortunately, the green belt means that essentially house building there is pretty much banned. We also like to build on brownfield sites, but every government has said that they want to prioritise brownfields since the new Labour days.
But they don't do it because it has to be detoxified.
Exactly. So, again, that adds further to the costs of house building and then pushes up prices for people. And, as we've said, the crisis is extraordinary. People cannot afford to rent or buy homes in either where they work or where their families live. This creates all kinds of knock-on social problems. And the only solution is to build more homes. Even if, migration is obviously adding to the demand for homes. Around a city worth of, or a population the size of Leeds is coming to the country every year. And obviously we haven't built a new city in 50 years. We haven't built Leeds worth of homes to accommodate people. But actually...
We never are.
No, but also it's worth saying that even if we cancelled, even if we had net zero migration, to use the Reform pledge, Changing lifestyles mean that we need more homes because we have smaller families, we live longer. So the demand for house building is there whether we like it or not. It's an issue that needs to be tackled.
And what do you think of these golden rules in order to build on greyfield sites? They need to have GP surgeries, school places, sufficient road network. I mean, has that even been thought through? Is the money there for that necessary infrastructure?
Well, yeah, if the money is passed on to developers, that actually might create just new hurdles to development. Of course, we need infrastructure in those places. We can't just allow more housing to stretch the demand on existing services, because that will only add to people's sort of justified opposition to people building in those areas. I think, what we need to see, as well as changes to this planning policy framework, there needs to be a rollback of, I think, green tape generally. And there have been some encouraging noises from the government on this. Angela Rayner was talking at the weekend about how, under certain rules, actually newts have more protections than people. So, we're spending hundreds of millions of pounds often on protecting habitats of animals that are not particularly endangered. Environmental impact assessments add huge costs to building projects, not just homes, in fact. And these are getting in the way of the homes we need, the infrastructure we need, roads, railways, power stations, all of that kind of thing. And it's leading to us having some of the most expensive housing in Europe, some of the most expensive infrastructure in Europe. So it's welcome to see Labour take this on. I worry that they will cave when some resistance emerges, because there will be local resistance. There will be resistance from lots of environmental NGOs and things like that.
OK. Fraser, good to see you. Thank you very much.
Well, it all ties in with our poll of the day today. We're asking, do you support Angela Rayner's Green Belt development plans to build this 1.5 million homes over the terms of this Parliament? Bring the results live throughout the day. The final result in Martin's show later. You can scan the QR code you can see on your screen if you're watching on TV. If you're listening on the radio, go to gbnews.com/poll.
Now let's have a look at the weather with Honor.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. So it's another grey and cloudy day ahead, likely to see some patchy rain and drizzle at times, and temperatures really struggling under cloudier skies. So a grey start for many of us, those outbreaks of rain and drizzle just starting to creep into eastern areas, moving their way inland through the course of the day. Should stay largely dry across western parts of England and Wales. Still a cloudy picture here though. The best of the brightness likely across northeastern parts of Scotland, western parts of Northern Ireland, where we may see some brighter spells, but in general temperatures really struggling under those cloudier skies, highs of between 8 to 10 Celsius in the far southeast. So to end the day then, there's still going to be plenty of cloud, quite cloudy across western parts of Scotland, but there will be some clearer spells across the far north, inland areas of Scotland too, but that's where it's going to turn particularly chilly overnight, and we may start to see some freezing fog patches develop too. Some clearer skies just to the west of Northern Ireland, but overall the bulk of the country seeing a very cloudy end to the day. Outbreaks of rain and drizzle still feeding their way into western parts of the country too. And then overnight, we don't really see much change. That cloud is going to stick around. That's going to keep things fairly mild. Still those outbreaks of rain and drizzle continuing. We may still see some clearer spells once again across parts of Northern Ireland, parts of northeast Scotland, but turning chilly here. And as I say, under those clear skies, we may start to see some fog, perhaps freezing fog patches develop by the morning. But elsewhere, fairly cloudy, and after a fairly mild night too, it is going to be another cloudy picture as we head into the end of the week. Rain and drizzle continuing, perhaps being a bit more widespread compared to Thursday. A few more western areas seeing those outbreaks of rain and drizzle. And once again, the best of the brightness, eastern parts of Northern Ireland, northeastern parts of Scotland, but to the northwest, some longer spells of rain and starting to turn quite blustery here too. And highs once again of around 7 to 8 Celsius.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, It happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Bansky's Girl with Balloon is arguably one of the artist's most recognisable images. So when a limited edition print signed by the artist was stolen from Grove Gallery in London, an investigation was launched by the Metropolitan Police's flying squad. The work was thankfully retrieved. The desire to own great works of art has once again become evident this week, albeit a little further afield on the continent. Police in Italy have uncovered a criminal network forging artworks by Bansky, Andy Warhol, Pablo Picasso and others. Investigators said that they've seized more than 2,100 fake pieces of art with a potential market value of about £165 million. With me to discuss that case is the Chief Executive of Grove Gallery, James Ryan.
The art world needs to tighten up. It is known as a bit of a Wild West out there because people will try and chance it with these forgeries. You're quite right, there's only one actual original, but even auction houses have been hoodwinked before.
The burglary that you suffered is sub judice, so we have to be careful what we say about it. But it must have been a bit of a shock to you. I mean, was it a broken window, a smashed door?
At 10, 11 o'clock at night and just hammer straight through, shoulder barging through the door and then in and out, you know, gone in 60 seconds. I must say, I know...
Obviously, that targeted attack. The person would have known what he or she was after. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I must say, I know they cop a lot of, flack, the police force, but the flying squad got the artwork back within 3 days. They were fantastic. So, yeah, I've never heard or seen, other than the Thomas Crown Affair type film, I just didn't think it'd be happening to little old me, in Fitzrovia, but it did, and thankfully we got it back.
GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Breakfast. It's 6:27. Now, yesterday we saw hundreds of furious farmers descend on Westminster, continue their protest against the government's changes to inheritance tax.
Well, it's thought 20,000 farmers arrived in central London over the last month, and more are expected to come down in the weeks ahead.
So, do farmers feel as though they got their message across, or do they feel as though it's falling on deaf ears?
Well, let's talk to a third and fourth generation set of farmers, Joe and Martin Brandreth. Good to see you both this morning. Joe, what's your take on this? Do you think anyone is listening to you?
I'm sure the general public are listening, but I feel like in Parliament, probably not. I think they've just, they've shut, like you say, batten down the hatches, and they're going to try and tough it out. But it's my son, my grandchildren. Low farm incomes we can put up with, but when it affects the next generation, that's when it really hurts, and you have to sort of stand up and do something.
And Martin, what was the protest like yesterday? We saw hundreds of tractors in Westminster. Do you think that made a difference to politicians who were looking out their windows thinking, oh, this can't be ignored?
Well, you hope so, don't you? You hope that the visual and the sound of us being there gives something different. That certainly, again, like my dad said, the general public, us driving in, people were chatting to on the street, the amount of support we've got from them, and the kind of things they were saying to us. People wanted to come and chat to us and say, look, we've got your back. Whatever you want to do, you do.
Well, I mean, and that's going to be the key, Martin, isn't it? Because ultimately, if you're not listened to doing what you're doing now, then it is going to have to be things like some sort of, well, we say strikes, but I mean, very difficult if you're a dairy farmer. But in terms of stopping the supplies and things.
Yeah. Well, no farmer wants to do it. It's the general opinion between farmers is we don't want to resort to that, but it's quite quickly getting there. And to be fair, the public, we spoke to at least 3 or 4 yesterday, said, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you striking already? Because if you're in a different sector, people would be striking straight away. But we just don't want to, but we may have to be forced to.
Do you fear as though you will have to escalate your protests, though, in order to be heard? I mean, you've got public support behind you, haven't you, to do that?
Yeah, I think at the moment, I think people are still just waiting and doing a few bits more locally, but I think it will ramp up quite quickly. There is different groups going on chatting about how things can, trying to do it in the best way to keep public support.
Joe, why is it, do you think, that the government doesn't get this? I mean, as you keep saying, the public get it, the public understand what the problem is with this policy. Why has the government not got it?
Well, I feel like they listen to the Treasury, and unfortunately the Treasury have not got their figures right, and therefore, the government, I see where they were coming from. They were trying to stop people from investing into farmland to avoid tax, but it seems to have hit the wrong area. It's hitting pretty much all farmers, and the ones that still want to invest, they've still got a 20% advantage. So they probably still will invest and take land. I mean, for instance, we're on the green belt, just outside the cities. Our land price is 3 times the national average, which puts up the value of our farm when I go to an unbelievable amount. But my son, he doesn't earn enough to be able to pay that, so the farm would have to go if it happens suddenly. I mean, it's a terrible thing that. I'd be better off not here by April 26th, but, we're not like that. But, I mean, that's the other thing, the mental health issues of it. I mean, I'd say to, any farmers that are out there, because there's been some terrible things happen since the budget, that, they're on their own, with their own mind, and that can be quite nasty. And, speak to somebody, please, because there's people out there that'll help you. And when you talk to somebody, it never seems as bad afterwards. But, no.
Yeah, it's a very good point, and I don't think people certainly in government, don't seem to be appreciating what farmers are going through at the moment. Gents, really good to talk to you both. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Everybody understands it.
I know.
Everybody gets it.
But it's almost like you'd think the politicians would be looking out the window yesterday and seeing the sense of feeling on the issue, not only from farmers but from the public as well, and thinking, oh, maybe our sums aren't quite right on this one. How can the farmers all be wrong and the public all be wrong?
It's not even the sums, is it? That's the thing. It's the basic concept that, as Joe was saying there, the land they own is worth a fortune.
Yeah.
It's worth a fortune. But in terms of family farming, you never sell it, do you? So you never see that money.
No.
And they're not on about having that money in their pockets, are they? They're on about being able to pass the land on so they can keep farming.
That's all they want to do, isn't it? And it's an easy fix, as we've said before. I mean, if you just say, look, if it's a working farm, you're not subject to this inheritance tax.
Yeah, it's not difficult.
No.
Anyway,
Well, let's see.
Obviously across all of this for you as it goes on. Now, it is time at 6:33 for our massive giveaway. Before we give you the details, though, guess who's going to be having an amazing Christmas this year?
Oh, who?
It's Cliff and Julie from Essex, because they won Christmas here on GB News, and here's what they had to say.
My name is Cliff. And my name is Julie. And we won £25,500 gift voucher and a GB News goodie bag. When my phone rang, I was on cloud 9. I couldn't even finish my job. Amazing. Just the best feeling ever. We can get everything we want. We can buy presents for friends and family. I'd say don't hesitate. Do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it. But we're glued to GB News. It's the best station ever. Merry Christmas, GB News. We love you.
Oh, Cliff and Julie. That is the best one yet, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
brilliant
good. Oh,
stuff.
congratulations.
You
to
just like it because it's your proper
Well,
accent.
I am.
So you're
I
an
am
Essex
biased.
girl.
I am. Yeah, and I just think it's the friendliest accent and the best people. And
Yeah.
the best part of the world. So well done, Cliff and Julie. Congratulations.
Oh, brilliant stuff. Well, if you want to win, they won 25,000 quid plus vouchers and all the rest of it, as you heard there. How about walking away with £50,000
Double
in
that,
tax-free
yeah.
cash? It could be yours. Here's how.
Imagine getting the call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Yes, good luck indeed. Now, do stay with us. Still to come, why has Luke Littler made the headlines again? We'll find out next.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. There are delays of up to 2 hours to Stena Line sailings between Carrum Line and Belfast, with lorries being parked up at the port. The port of Holyhead is closed for emergency repairs. In Leicestershire, the A6 is closed each way along Abbey Lane at Belgrave after an accident. In Norfolk, the A47 is closed southbound away from Great Yarmouth towards Lowestoft after an accident last night. The M4 from Wiltshire into Berkshire is closed eastbound from junction 15 east of Swindon to 14 at Hungerford because of a spillage of hydraulic fluid. In Essex, the A13 is closed westbound from Basildon to Stamford and Hope for emergency repairs with queues from the Pitsea flyover. In Kent, the A2 is closed each way off the A20 at Dover because of an accident and spillage, and train services in Cornwall have been stopped between St Erth and St Ives because of a power failure. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Paul's here with All Your Sport. Good morning.
Good morning.
Do we talk a bit Champions League?
Yeah, Manchester City, I tell you. They could have a UB40 song to go with them. 1 in 10, you remember? I am a 1 in 10. Because that's all they've won. They've only won 1 in 10. So maybe they could play that as they walk out at the Etihad. Do you reckon they'd be taking the mick? Do you think they'd be too unhappy?
No, I'm just thinking about
be too happy?
of 1 in 10.
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, we were like the Campbell brothers for a second, weren't we? Right, Juventus 2, Manchester City 0. So, I mean, it's a crisis. There is no question about it. There is a crisis at Manchester City. So they imploded again. They started well. Then the first goal goes in, and then the second one, and then they're all over the place. It could be down to the fact that Rodri is missing, the midfielder, but there's so much put into that. But really, they need a rebuild. The players are getting slightly older, and it's all these fine margins where they might not be quite as quick as they were before. Pep's got trouble. As far as the Champions League is concerned, the top 8, I'll be going on about this, how it works. It's 32 teams. The top 8 qualify. So if you're in the top 8 and they are way down in 22nd, if you're between 9th and 24th, you go into a playoff, which is where Man City, that's the only hope that they've got, because there's no way they're going to get in the top 8. And if they end up 25th to 32nd, then they will be eliminated. Ooh. So it really is not very good. Whereas Arsenal, looking very good. Dispatched Monaco.
Does it kill you to say that?
3-0. You know what? No, it doesn't.
So does. Yes.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Arsenal 3, Monaco 0. Again, Saka, terrific. Miles Lewis, scary, 18 years old. So they're putting these young players in and they're all doing really well. So very good for Arsenal. A lot of talk around them, how far they're going to go in the Champions League, but it's a long way to go yet.
World Cup in Saudi.
Yeah.
I seem to have missed this. When was this announced?
Well, it was announced yesterday.
Oh, right, okay.
The way it was always done...
Just wondering.
...is that there would be different bidders and then whoever's the head of FIFA at the time, although it's Gianni Infantino at the moment, will open it up and then go, and the winner is. Now... Have you heard of vote by acclamation before?
No.
No.
Vote by acclamation, this is something I wasn't familiar with. You know what? It is. So, vote by acclamation means that he announces the winner, and if you all clap and agree, that means it's done and dusted. It's very bizarre. So Gianni Infantino...
He's picked it, then.
Well, let me show you. So it's Saudi Arabia. This is when they make the announcement. So if you imagine, if it's the Oscars or any other time, you open it up and there's the big reveal at the end and everybody's excited. But everybody knows who's won. This is how they did it yesterday.
It is a great pleasure that I can confirm that the host of the FIFA World Cup 2034 will be Saudi Arabia. Mabruk.
Now, that was the acclamation. There was like over 200 delegates, and they're all on Zoom screens, and they all have to clap. And he goes, yeah, well, if you clap, that means you agree with it, and therefore... And that's vote by acclamation, which, for me, doesn't sound terribly democratic, does it?
No.
The other one, I mean, they announced...
The clapping wasn't even very convincing.
It was a bit
kind of
like...
slow,
Yeah, there's a bit of that going on.
Yeah.
So the other one was the 2030 World Cup, was also announced yesterday.
Oh.
And again, that was already agreed, because the thing is, Saudi Arabia were the only bidders. They were the only one, so obviously it was going to be them.
Well, they're hosting it twice.
Sorry?
They're hosting it twice, Saudi.
Well, no, this is Spain now. This is the 2030. So that was 2034. So the 2030, I beg your pardon. So Spain, Portugal and Morocco were announced for that one.
Oh.
And then they're going to play games in Uruguay, Argentina and Paraguay. They say to celebrate the World Cup because it's 100 years since it was in South America. But... the reason those games are there is because they wanted South America to bid, or South America wanted to bid for 2034. But a little word from Gianni, you know what? We'll give you a couple of games in 2030 if you keep out the way, and then we can let Saudi Arabia have 2034. So anyway, it's very bizarre.
Very, very odd, isn't it?
There's all these new stadiums, and I'll show you some of those in the next couple of hours, but they're these crazy big stadiums. But, of course, they do what they want because they've got so much money to build this stuff.
Yeah. Paul, we are out of time. I want you to come back and tell me about Luke Littler in the next hour.
I will do that for you.
Good. Good.
We
All
look
right.
forward to it.
Thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure.
We've got the papers coming up in just a moment.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Love a bit of baking and share some hot tips. We're delighted to be joined by our baking extraordinaire, Matty Edgell, who won Great British Bake Off last year. Woo! Welcome. Congratulations as well. I'm sure you're sick of being congratulated.
And there's a nice reminder.
No, you like all the glory.
Yeah.
What was it like winning the Great British Bake Off? What's last year been like for you?
Winning I was not expecting to win. At any point until they said my name.
You're a very
it was
humble
a nice
guy.
surprise. No, I was just
really?
in touch with reality. I wasn't.
Was it quite a close race throughout then?
Yeah, I considered myself the underdog throughout. I think the first week I turned around after the showstopper and kind of saw how good everyone was, and then looked at mine and thought, how have I got here? And that kind of theme followed through.
But then that surely like an underdog.
Yeah, it did.
Actually, I'm going to get better throughout this.
Yeah, I think it made me kind of like really tune into the feedback that they was giving me and trying to embed that throughout. So that's probably why.
Could you feel yourself improving as the series went on?
Definitely, and I think also like kind of simultaneously my confidence improved at the same time, and then that like little bit of belief in myself probably helped out as well.
What was your strength? Biscuits, cake, bread?
I think cake's my strength.
Cake.
I think cake, typically if you start baking, that's probably where you start, isn't it? So that was what I knew most.
How did you start baking?
I've been asked this so many times since...
You don't know.
I attribute it to my nan.
Sweet.
But yeah, I would say, I think most people probably attribute it to like a grandparent or something that they maybe done with like their parents when they was growing up. So I'll give it to my nan.
Or the major lockdown baking boom.
Yeah, banana bread.
Everybody all over the place, don't it? It's good.
Yeah, it's really good. I love a banana bread, even now.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
All right, 6:47. Let's see what's making the news this morning with Dr. Renee Honderkamp and Susie Stride. Good morning to you both. Susie, let's kick off, should we, with Donald Trump, who is Time Magazine's Person of the Year.
I know, it's an interesting one. Well, I mean, as most people will know, I'm not the biggest fan of Donald Trump. However, I think... And I've said this, look, he's now going to be the President of the United States of America, so ultimately our government needs to be doing everything they can to build good relationships with him. And it's right, isn't it, that people are recognised for... It was a great achievement, you know, it was a great achievement, and so it's right it's recognised. And obviously he's very chuffed. He talks about how he grew up reading the Time magazine and whatnot. So, yeah, I think it's the right choice, even if it's a choice that maybe wouldn't be my choice.
I think the shortlist was the most interesting bit of this. So it was Kamala Harris, Kate Middleton, Elon Musk and Benjamin Netanyahu. That was a really interesting shortlist.
Very odd, isn't it? That's very, very odd.
It was an odd list, yeah.
It would have been a good choice, considering what she's been through this year.
Yeah, but that doesn't make you a Person of the Year for that. I mean, you know how much I love the Princess of Wales,
Yes,
but I wouldn't have thought it would make you Person of the Year.
No, in terms of achievement, I mean, you can see why Donald Trump is Person of the Year.
Yeah.
And apparently he's going to ring the opening bell of the New York Stock Exchange this morning in celebration of this cover. Of course, I'm sure we'll see pictures from that as well a little bit later on. Renee, let's talk about these planning rules that are changing.
Yeah, I think this is really interesting. Look, there is no doubt that we need more houses and we need them quickly. I worry. I think it's really good that we're going to designate the grey zones, because I think there is lots of land that is designated as green that isn't really green. So we should definitely be building on those. So I think that's a good idea. What worries me about this is this getting rid of any rules for buildings so that they don't have to be pretty anymore. Well, actually, do you know what? Our country does have to be pretty. And I think we should have some say over the kind of buildings. Let's build them, but let's have some say over what they look like.
Yeah, so the idea that they can knock up anything they want, it's an automatic yes.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I actually completely agree. Look, there is a housing crisis in this country. We need to build homes, and that is, absolutely crucial. However, let's learn the lessons of the past. Like the 1960s, these big blocks that were just put up, and they're just, even now we see them, don't we, in inner city areas, and they're just like eyesores, and actually they're not good for community, and they're not good for people's mental health, and they're not good for crime in all the ways. And I just think we need to be very careful. We need to build well, and also I think we need to be really careful about where we build. You can't just concrete over areas. There's areas that are already very, very developed, overdeveloped. So I really hope they do this intelligently. But I think we all agree we do need to build homes.
But don't we need... I mean, this is what I don't understand, and you're a Labour supporter.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. So there's a basic agreement here, but where are the safeguards?
Yes, yes. Well, this is where I just think, we're going to need people to challenge and hold to account, and, and like I say, we do need to build these homes. It is a bit ridiculous, and also, loads of taxpayers' money is wasted on planning going backwards and forwards, actually sometimes on developments that should just go ahead. But I do hold those concerns, because, even where I live on the Isle of Dogs, there's this big development. We're the most developed area in Europe, densely populated, and, they're just trying to steam ahead with development. I just think it's not good for local school kids. So it needs to be done well, and I have those concerns. So, yeah, we
really need new towns, don't we?
Yeah.
That's what we need. We need to build...
New generation.
With the whole infrastructure in there, with schools, with trains, with doctors, with hospitals, as units. That's what we actually need as satellites to London. London is heaving. How much bigger can we make it? I don't see much, greenbelt land in London that they're going to build on. And I think where the push is going to come from this is these new Labour MPs are suddenly going to start getting very cross constituents in their areas, and then it's going to change again.
That's the thing I was going to say, is that we were talking beforehand, places like Milton Keynes, these are great places to live. These are, so I think there is a new generation of new towns.
Susie, let's have a look, shall we, at Keir Starmer. Is he cozying up to Europe?
I mean, there's different language you can use on this. Look, ultimately, for this country, we want the best deal we can get, don't we? We want, whether it's on trade, whether it's on fisheries, wherever it may be, we want the best deal. And so people can call it cozying up or not. We now have Donald Trump. We need to, be on good terms with him. We need to build strong relationships with him.
What we can't have is, but I mean, there's been an argument last week sort of saying, well, do we try and cosy up to America or the EU? And Keir Starmer seems to be saying, well, both.
Yeah. Well,
you can't do both necessarily, not to the same extent.
Well, I don't know. I think. Look, hopefully they know what they're doing. I know you guys probably won't like me saying that, but I think we do need to do both. They're our closest trading partner, and so, and actually in the past we have had good relationships with both. So I think that is the right thing to do, and I think that's the right thing to do for small businesses, for our economy, etc. But I don't think you want to do one that then, undermines the other.
I just think that Europe have already demonstrated over the last 7 years that they are the most vicious negotiators around, and I don't think this current government or any that we've seen so far are up to those kind of negotiations. And I think that Europe won't cosy up with us without demanding that we give much, and I think we will give much.
I mean, that's the issue. If we give up a lot to get a decent deal with Europe, well, we're almost back in the EU, only in a worse position, aren't we?
Look, I think, I've said this a number of times, we're never going back. That's just not what's going to happen here. I don't think we need to have all this fear. Look, we're out of the EU. That decision was made back in 2016. The job now to do is to get good deals for local businesses. This is the thing. I don't run a local business, but when you talk to these people, they're not ideological. They're just like, this has devastated this part of my business. And that's what we cannot have in this country. And so, look, you can use whatever word you want to use, but for me, I'm very much, you've got to go after the solution. And I just think we're being practical here.
It is ironic, though, isn't it, that what's devastating small business right now is the budget and the national insurance changes and the minimum wages. That's what's devastated small businesses in this country, and is going to kill them.
OK, there we've got to leave it, I'm afraid. Susie, Renee, thank you very much indeed.
Now, let's have a look at the weather with Honor.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. So it's another grey and cloudy day ahead, likely to see some patchy rain and drizzle at times, and temperatures really struggling under cloudier skies. So a grey start for many of us, those outbreaks of rain and drizzle just starting to creep into eastern areas, moving their way inland through the course of the day. Should stay largely dry across western parts of England and Wales. Still a cloudy picture here though. The best of the brightness likely across northeastern parts of Scotland, western parts of Northern Ireland, where we may see some brighter spells, but in general temperatures really struggling under those cloudier skies, highs of between 8 to 10 Celsius in the far southeast. So to end the day then, there's still going to be plenty of cloud, quite cloudy across western parts of Scotland, but there will be some clearer spells across the far north, inland areas of Scotland too, but that's where it's going to turn particularly chilly overnight, and we may start to see some freezing fog patches develop too. Some clearer skies just to the west of Northern Ireland, but overall the bulk of the country seeing a very cloudy end to the day. Outbreaks of rain and drizzle still feeding their way into western parts of the country too. And then overnight, we don't really see much change. That cloud is going to stick around. That's going to keep things fairly mild. Still those outbreaks of rain and drizzle continuing. We may still see some clearer spells once again across parts of Northern Ireland, parts of northeast Scotland, but turning chilly here. And as I say, under those clear skies, we may start to see some fog, perhaps freezing fog patches develop by the morning. But elsewhere, fairly cloudy, and after a fairly mild night too, it is going to be another cloudy picture as we head into the end of the week. Rain and drizzle continuing, perhaps being a bit more widespread compared to Thursday. A few more western areas seeing those outbreaks of rain and drizzle. And once again, the best of the brightness, eastern parts of Northern Ireland, northeastern parts of Scotland, but to the northwest, some longer spells of rain and starting to turn quite blustery here too. And highs once again of around 7 to 8 Celsius.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. There are delays of up to 2 hours to Stena Line sailings between Cairnryan and Belfast, with lorries being parked up at the port. The port of Holyhead is closed for emergency repairs to damage caused by the storms. In Norfolk, the A47 is closed southbound, heading away from Great Yarmouth towards Lowestoft after an accident last night. There are delays of up to 4 hours to Stena Line sailings between Fishguard and Rosslare. The M4 from Wiltshire into Berkshire is closed eastbound from junction 15 east of Swindon to 14 at Hungerford because of a spillage of hydraulic fluid. Trains into and out of Marylebone Station in London have been stopped because of a signalling problem. In Kent, the A2 is closed each way off the A20 at Dover after an accident and fuel spill last night. And trains in Cornwall have been stopped between Penzance and St Ives, Truro and Falmouth Docks because of a power failure.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British giveaway. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. Sara Sharif was failed.
Those are the words of the Children's Commissioner as the parents of the 10-year-old girl were found guilty of her murder.
Well, serious questions being asked as to how her father was given shared custody of her, despite it being known that he abused her siblings for years.
Angela Rayner will press ahead with plans to prioritise house building in areas of the Green Belt, insisting there is no alternative to large-scale development in the countryside around big cities.
The Prime Minister will meet the European Council President. He's going to hold talks on defence cooperation with the EU.
Thousands of veterans who were ejected from the military because of their sexual orientation or gender identity will be able to receive up to £70,000 each in compensation in order to correct historic wrongs, a 50% rise to the financial recognition scheme.
Now it's Christmas party season, which of course means a few festive faux pas may occur. But how do we deal with them? We're going to talk to an etiquette expert to tell us all later.
Cooking Christmas on a budget, we're going to be joined by TV chef Rosemary Shaker for her festive tips.
As the Football Association is accused of sportswashing following the announcement that Saudi Arabia will host the 2034 World Cup, we're asking, really, should they be allowed to?
And in the sport, Manchester City crisis continues as they lose to Juventus in the Champions League, while Arsenal dispatch Monaco. There's a British Europa League clash tonight as Rangers play Spurs. And in that one-horse race, FIFA announced Saudi Arabia then as host of the 2034 World Cup.
Hello there, good morning. Another cloudy and grey day ahead with some rain and drizzle at times. Some brighter weather too. I'll be here later with all the details.
It's just gone 7 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello and this is GB News Breakfast. Now you may have spotted our little friend behind us. Elf on the shelf. Can we get a shot of that?
Can't see it there. Yes, we have got an elf on the... this is new to me.
It is a new thing.
It's a modern phenomenon, I think.
It is.
In the last 5 years or so.
That's all it is.
The elves are busy. They move every morning.
So the plan is that you have... Because, my kids are 17, 15... Oh, look, there he is.
Yeah. If you're listening on the radio, there is a strange creature sort of popping above the monitors. There you go, very cute little thing.
And they move every morning and then they report back to Father Christmas whether the children are being good or naughty.
Oh,
Is that the plan?
That's the plan. They're like they're like the moles for Santa.
Oh, are they? So then they move around and then they just appear in different places. Yeah. Right, OK.
So if they're monitoring us then this morning,
oh dear,
we've had it basically, ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid.
But it is a new, like you say, it's a new phenomena.
Yeah.
Because there was no elves around. My kids who are 19 and 17, we didn't have the elves on the shelves.
No, we didn't do it either.
Right.
But it's a new thing. The elves are busy.
Yes.
And they're up to mischief.
My parents just used to write to Father Christmas and say, don't give him anything. He's been vile this year.
Is that true?
Never got any Christmas presents.
Got coal.
No.
Coal, yeah. So I was always... Actually, I don't think I was bad.
No. What was your favourite present? Do you remember?
Yes. Oh, Lord, I embarrassed myself. It was a little K9.
Oh, wow, the Doctor Who.
From from the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
And this is with technology in the day. It used to speak.
Yeah.
But actually, it had a plastic record in the bottom with a needle that used to spin round and speak.
Wow.
Before the days of microchips in toys and things.
I used to have... I loved Action Man. I remember getting the Action Man that had, like, the gripping hands.
Oh, yeah.
But the thing is, because the gripping hands were rubber, by the end of Christmas, I'd chewed all the fingers off of the gripping hand, so it couldn't grip anything. But, yeah, they were...
my brother had an eagle-eyed Action.
Oh, yeah, they were good. Yeah.
What's your favourite toy?
I asked for a BlackBerry phone. I must have been about 13, 14. This is when they were really big. Do you remember everyone wanted
Yeah.
And then my mum gave me a box, and I was like, oh, my goodness, could this be a BlackBerry?
Yeah.
But it was a BlackBerry fruit.
It was a BlackBerry. That's a really bad trick to play on someone, isn't it?
Really bad.
How upset were you?
Really upset. Really upset. I know, but quite clever.
Okay.
Well, too young for a BlackBerry.
Too young for a BlackBerry.
Too black, yeah, that's true. Let us know. gbnews.com/yours say. What have the elves been up to in your house?
Right. Our main news this morning, and after years of what prosecutors have called horrific abuse, 3 members of Sara Sharif's family have been found guilty over her death.
Yes, her father and her stepmother were convicted of murder, while her uncle was found guilty of allowing her to die.
Well, the 10-year-old suffered unimaginable violence, the conviction sparking calls for urgent reform in child protection.
Well, following the verdict, the Children's Commissioner has said the law must change so children who are suspected victims of abuse cannot be home educated.
Let's talk to the CEO and founder of Freedom from Abuse, Marilyn Hawes. Marilyn, it's always good to talk to you. Thanks for your time this morning. It's just here we are again with another case and more calls for the rules to be changed and monitoring to be tougher and all the rest of it. Nothing ever seems to change.
Nothing does change. If you remember the case of Victoria Colombier all those years ago, and Lord Lamming came out with a very damning review, a large percentage of that review still has not been taken on. There are too many multi-agencies involved. There are social workers, not enough of them. Too many social workers, in fact, most of them, I think, these days work from home. This is a sort of profession and career where you need to be in the same room as more senior social workers so you can discuss the case. I am puzzled by where he said, and I picked up on this, the father said he legally punished his daughter. That this is not legal in the UK. And I'm wondering, and I did read a report by Will Forster, the MP for Woking, who said also, were there cultural sensitivities in this case? And we've got to stop this. We have laws in the UK. And the homeschooling, there are some excellent homeschooling schoolers out there. But this is where abusive parents do hide away. But also, just take a look at homeschooling. How do we know the children are receiving the adequate education? But there should be a registration, there should be checks, just as there is within the education system itself. And then we go on to the family courts. Well, the family courts are supposed to be there for the voice of the child to be heard. Well, the voice of the child isn't heard. What's heard are very often social workers who have been manipulated by abusive parents to let the child, and this is what happened in this case, the social worker recommended, even though the social worker knew this man had a history of violence, recommended to the court that go back to the father. This is nonsense. The family courts are a shambles. I can tell you that now. Time and again, they are failing. But everyone has got blood on their hands here. I do not believe the neighbours didn't hear, because here I have a report that says neighbours heard smacking and yelling, as did other neighbours. They were known to be a concern, but no one bothered to phone the police or social services. Now, the neighbours, now I was a teacher in a school, as you know. I personally would have taken, against all the policies, I would have taken that child to the hospital myself if I had any instinct that there is something fundamentally wrong here, and there was. So you've got people that don't speak out, you've got family courts that are not fit for purpose, you've got homeschooling that needs another review. It is just shocking. And, people have got to forget some of these policies and multi-agencies. There's too many cooks in the kitchen. And, you know, you've got to use your common sense. A child's life is at risk here. I am sick to death of people saying, oh, you know, child protection laws have got to change. Yes, but they never do, because no government has ever bothered to engage. Children are left to rot in this country. Not one guy. I've done this job for 23 years. How many times am I going to have to come on a TV and talk about these heinous, barbaric, sadistic crimes? This man should frankly be deported because he wasn't even born in this country. We don't have to keep him here. He should go back to Pakistan and let them sort him out, because this is just, I mean, I have a 10-year-old granddaughter. And honestly, I cried when I heard about this, because I look at my little granddaughter and I think, goodness, I mean, you can't tell me being burnt with an iron, beaten with a cricket bat, that the neighbours didn't hear and failed. Because, see, I know of a case personally of a domestic abuse case that came my way the other day. Now, I know the neighbour. The police went round and said, did you hear anything? This neighbour said, no. I said, well, why did you say that? She said, because I don't want to get involved. That's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. Everybody's responsibility in this country, every grown adult over the age of 18 has a duty of care to every child. And I am outraged by this, because it keeps on happening.
Well, Marilyn, it's about time someone really was listening to you. Thank you for your time this morning, as always.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. It won't change. It won't change. No one cares.
Well, we care.
No one cares enough. No one cares enough. And I'm a lone wolf barking at the moon, honestly.
No
one wants to.
Let's hope enough people watching and listening now take on board what you said, because as I said, we've all got a duty of care, and it's about time we exercised it.
Thanks, Marilyn. Now, Sir Keir Starmer is vowing to override blockers and put builders first as he prepares to unveil sweeping changes to the planning process.
New plans mean increased developments on the Green Belt, though the government has pledged to prioritise brownfield sites first.
The plans have already been met with criticism, though, with Shadow Housing Secretary Kevin Hollenrake accusing Labour of bulldozing through the concerns of local communities.
The Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, says it's a landmark overhaul.
We think this will streamline the system, because there's far too much delays at the moment, and therefore by having the policy framework nationally and the local plan means that you can plan for the houses in the place where local people have identified they want it, and more importantly make sure we deliver the infrastructure alongside that.
Well, in other political news, the Prime Minister is continuing with what he's calling a reset of relations between the EU and the UK.
Well, Sir Keir Starmer is meeting the European Council President Antonio Costa today.
Well, let's get more on both of these stories with our political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Good to see you, Catherine. So what do we make of this reset of relations with the EU that we keep hearing so much about?
Yes, well, the Prime Minister will be meeting Antonio Costa, the EU Council President, in Downing Street. He, of course, has spent a lot of time since he was elected in July in European capitals, in Berlin, in Paris, and so on. And they talk a lot, don't they, about this reset, because they feel that getting growth that they are promising, but the projections from the OBR look very anemic related to the budget, that it's critical to have a closer trading relationship with Europe. They'll also be talking about security, of course, given what's happened in Syria. But the question is, of course, what will the EU demand from us in return, because we know that they would like some sort of youth mobility scheme. The government are currently saying that that's not on the table, but you do wonder if down the line there may be some accommodation, something that's for maybe 1 or 2 years.
OK. Catherine, we've got to leave it there because we need to zip over to Fraser Myers, Deputy Editor of Spiked.
Good morning.
On this housing issue, there are huge concerns about this. There's an acknowledgement that we need more housing, but even in terms of the infrastructure, Angela Rayner is saying, well, of course, the infrastructure has to be there. County council leaders are saying, but you're not providing any funding for that.
I think they're probably going to try and shift the cost onto developers to build some of this infrastructure based on Angela Rayner's announcements. But that's right, you know, there are always challenges when building new houses. But I think the move to recognise that the Green Belt is one of the big barriers to house building is really important. The Green Belt sits around every major city, and this is where we need housing. You know, it's on the outskirts of cities. That's where people work. That's where the demand for, you know, new people coming in, where that is where economic growth is centred. So, in a way, the kind of current policy sort of makes no sense. We strangle house building in precisely the places where it's needed most, and the obvious effect of that is that house prices continually go up, homes become unaffordable to buy and rent for vast numbers of people, and, you know, that just adds to the share of misery in this country.
And that's the thing, it needs to be the right homes, affordable homes, in places where people want and need them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, you know, there are lots of people will say, well, you know, there's lots of vacant homes. There's several 100,000 vacant homes in this country. What can we do with them? Well, maybe they're not the right size, you don't have the right facilities, or they could be inadequate, or simply in the wrong places. You know, if there aren't enough homes in the southeast of England, where the economy is growing the fastest, where there are the most jobs, then it's no good having spare homes in another part of the country. Building is the only solution out of this crisis. The Green Belt is the biggest barrier to building, so it is welcome that the Labour government is acknowledging this. If they solve the housing crisis, I don't think they will. I don't think it's something that can be solved in a single parliament. But if they go some way to solving it, it will actually, you know, have unlock other problems. Economic growth, for instance, is being constrained by the inadequate housing or housing in the wrong places. This also applies to infrastructure as well, the planning rules. Some of the rules around what we can and can't build or the sort of provisions and hoops that you have to jump through to build are completely insane. So, to give you an example, there's been a planned tunnel built between Kent and Essex. We haven't put a single spade in the ground. The Lower Thames crossing, the planning application alone has cost us £300 million. Now, to put that into context, that's more than it cost Norway to build the world's longest tunnel from start to finish. So we need to get a grip on this.
Stuff like that is crazy. Fraser, thanks very much indeed.
Well, this leads to our poll of the day today on the government's house building plans. We are asking, do you support Angela Rayner's Green Belt development plan to build 1.5 million homes? We'll bring you the live results throughout the day, so make sure you stay tuned. As always, the final result will be announced later in Martin Daubney's show. And for all of the latest polls, news and how to vote, just go to gbnews.com/poll, or you can scan the QR code on your screens now.
Right. Should we see what the weather's going to do for you today? Here's Anna.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. So it's another grey and cloudy day ahead, likely to see some patchy rain and drizzle at times, and temperatures really struggling under cloudier skies. So a grey start for many of us, those outbreaks of rain and drizzle just starting to creep into eastern areas, moving their way inland through the course of the day. Should stay largely dry across western parts of England and Wales. Still a cloudy picture here though. The best of the brightness likely across northeastern parts of Scotland, western parts of Northern Ireland, where we may see some brighter spells, but in general temperatures really struggling under those cloudier skies, highs of between 8 to 10 Celsius in the far southeast. So to end the day then, there's still going to be plenty of cloud, quite cloudy across western parts of Scotland, but there will be some clearer spells across the far north, inland areas of Scotland too, but that's where it's going to turn particularly chilly overnight, and we may start to see some freezing fog patches develop too. Some clearer skies just to the west of Northern Ireland, but overall the bulk of the country seeing a very cloudy end to the day. Outbreaks of rain and drizzle still feeding their way into western parts of the country too. And then overnight, we don't really see much change. That cloud is going to stick around. That's going to keep things fairly mild. Still those outbreaks of rain and drizzle continuing. We may still see some clearer spells once again across parts of Northern Ireland, parts of northeast Scotland, but turning chilly here. And as I say, under those clear skies, we may start to see some fog, perhaps freezing fog patches develop by the morning. But elsewhere, fairly cloudy, and after a fairly mild night too, it is going to be another cloudy picture as we head into the end of the week. Rain and drizzle continuing, perhaps being a bit more widespread compared to Thursday. A few more western areas seeing those outbreaks of rain and drizzle. And once again, the best of the brightness, eastern parts of Northern Ireland, northeastern parts of Scotland, but to the northwest, some longer spells of rain and starting to turn quite blustery here too. And highs once again of around 7 to 8 Celsius.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, it's time now for our massive giveaway. But before we give you the details on that, shall we hear from two of the very best people from two of the very best places in the world?
Two of them, indeed.
Yeah.
It's Cliff and Julie from Essex.
Indeed.
And they've just won Christmas on GB News. They're very excited. Who can blame them? Here's what they had to say.
My name is Cliff.
And my name is Julie. And we won £25,500 gift voucher and a GB News goodie bag.
When my phone rang, I was on cloud nine. I couldn't even finish my job.
Amazing. Just the best feeling ever.
We can get everything we want. We can buy presents for friends and family.
I'd say don't hesitate. Do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it. But we're glued to GB News. It's the best station ever.
Merry Christmas, GB News!
We love you!
I think we love you, Cliff and
Yeah,
Julie.
that is the best one yet, for sure. Cliff and Julie, congratulations to you. Well, if that sounds good to you, 25 grand they won, and some vouchers and other things like that. Well, you could actually win double that in tax-free cash in our latest Great British giveaway. It's actually the biggest one we've ever done. Here's how you get a chance to make it yours.
Imagine getting the call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Yes, best of luck to you on that one. Now, what's sports washing? I imagine it's something that needs a lot of vanish.
I was about to say, to me, it sounds like it is a very soiled wash that needs a very hot wash with lots of product. That's what I think of.
Anyway, the Football Association has been accused of sports washing following the announcement that Saudi Arabia is going to host the 2034 World Cup. Should they be allowed to? We're going to debate it next.
I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
"7:24, good morning to you. We've been talking today about the Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister's plans for planning, of all things, massive reform. We need to start building, they say, this 1.5 million houses in the current Parliament, and to do that, all the planning rules need to change so that more houses can be knocked up quickly. Let's head to Westminster and the Shadow Secretary of State for Housing, Kevin Hollinrake. Good to see you this morning. There is an urgent need for this housing, isn't there? So isn't this right that things are changing?
Well, we're not against building more houses. In fact, that's exactly what we've been doing. Over the last decade was the most successful period of housing delivery in 50 years. What I'm concerned about with these rules is that they're really going to drive a coach and horses, a bulldozer if you like, through local concerns about where they're going to be built and how they're going to be built. You know, 1.5 million homes, but lots of those homes are going to be built in Greenbelt, in rural areas. Targets in London will be reduced. Targets in most of the big rural areas across the country will be doubled. So it's really where they're going to be built is the concern. And the thing is, people's concerns are going to be completely swept aside by Angela Rayner in this headlong rush to build more homes when we've already got lots of planning consents around the country.
It is questionable, though, isn't it, that you were so great at building houses whilst the Tories were in charge. I mean, Bloomberg says that you failed on house building, that in some areas between 2010 and 2024, only one home was built for every 10 people that was added to the population. Doesn't that highlight your government's failure to manage not only migration, but house building too?
Well, the facts don't support that argument at all. If you look at the numbers between 2013 and 2023, we delivered an average of 207,000 homes. That's net new additions every single year. That's higher than any time since the 1960s. And in the 1970s, which is seen as a golden time for house building, were less than 200,000. So the numbers over there, we're delivering more. There's 1 million planning consents around the country that are not being built out. There'll be another 1.5 million planning consents now over the next 5 years. So you've got 2.5, 3 million planning consents. What you need to do is make sure these houses are actually built. So we had the system operating well. We were seeing more first-time buyers. We're seeing more housing delivery. We're seeing that fairly shared around the country. And lots of those houses being built in urban areas where the jobs are. Now, what you see Angela Rayner doing is cutting targets in London by about 20% and doubling targets in rural areas and in home counties.
Forgive me,
so this is what's wrong.
If you say there's all these planning consents already in place, well, they're not going to ignore those. That's got to be a priority, hasn't it? If the planning is already there, that's where they're going to build first.
Well, let's see. I mean, you've got to make sure that the developers develop out those units, those houses in those areas. But as I say, you can do this while making sure the houses are built in the right places. And what we're seeing is typical socialism here in terms of gerrymandering the house building out of urban areas and building in Greenbelt and rural areas. That can't be right. You see in some parts of the country, Westmoreland and Furness, for example, their numbers are a five-fold increase. Cumberland, a five-fold increase. North Yorkshire, a threefold increase, with a 20% cut in London. How can that be right when we know the demand for housing is in those urban areas? So yes, build more houses, but build them in the right places and make sure you have democratic consent. What we heard in Parliament this week, as a result of an urgent question by ourselves, was that the government is going to completely sweep aside local democratic consent. They're going to say councillors will not be able to have a view on a new big housing development in their area. That's the reality. So they're going to build these homes without democratic approval. We are very concerned about that. Yes, supportive of more housing, but make sure you have democratic consent for that housing.
A lot of people would be up in arms. I mean, you mentioned Westmoreland and Furness. I mean, that's my area, born and bred, and there is a great deal of concern
you must
there.
be concerned about it.
Well, there's a lot of people concerned about it there, but those plans and those targets to build more houses in that area have been around for a decade. That's not new. That happened under the Conservative government.
No, I think you're missing the point there, Steve. It's a six-fold increase from the current target. Six-fold increase. You think that's fair? And while London's seen a 20% decrease in their target, you're going to tell me that's fair? I don't think if you're living in Westmoreland and Furness, you're going to think that's fair, or Cumberland, or North Yorkshire, or many other parts of the country. I think you're going to see that she's doing her mates a favour in London, Sadiq Khan a favour in London, when he's massively under-delivered on his target. He's been around, and he's only been delivering half that target already, that new target. So instead of building them in urban areas around the country where she's cutting the targets, she's going to stick them in the area you know and love, in places like Westmoreland and Furness. I don't think that's right.
Before we let you go, we are running out of time with you. Can I ask you about Nigel Farage and the threat of Reform UK? Because Nigel Farage is now the bookies' favourite to be the next PM. Ladbrokes has got him at 5-2 odds, Badenoch at 3-1. I mean, this is a massive blow for you, isn't it, with Kemi Badenoch as your new leader? She's meant to be the Prime Minister in waiting, but it seems like Reform have got more momentum than the Tories at the moment. You must be worried.
I don't accept that at all. And they're both kind of joint favourites. You know, there's no question Reform is a threat. But the biggest threat is going to be people vote Reform and they put Keir Starmer back in number 10, which would be a disaster. I can't think many people really are too excited by that prospect. Listen, Kemi Badenoch has just been elected our leader. She's putting together a programme that I think will excite the people of this country. We know what people tell me about Kemi, that when she speaks, people listen. And she will bring the programmes along. She'll bring the rules around controlling migration, the measures to improve public services, to make sure we have a strong and growing economy, cutting red tape, cutting taxes. All those things will come through. I think when people see what the agenda she has, the policy programme she has, they'll decide Kemi Badenoch is the right person to be in number 10, not Keir Starmer.
OK. Kevin Holden-Rake, always good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. I just think with all of these polls, I know they're quite interesting. It's far too early.
Far too early. I mean, if
there's another 4 years.
4.5 years, yeah.
And Labour's not going to go early because they're not going to have to. They're not in a political position where they're going to have to cave in at any point. So, you know, who knows where we'll be in another 4 years when the campaigning begins. Yeah. Then we'll have to see what's going on with the polls, and maybe Nigel will be way out in front by then. Yeah. Or maybe not.
Well, let us know what you think. gbnews.com/your say.
Right. Saudi Arabia has been confirmed, controversially, as the host nation for the 2034 World Cup.
But the announcement has been met with criticism from activist groups who argue that workers could face exploitation.
So we're asking this morning, should they actually be allowed to have it at all?
Well, joining us now is commentator Aisha Ali Khan and football writer Harry Harris. Good to see you both this morning. Aisha, let's start with you. Should Saudi Arabia host the World Cup in 2034?
Morning, Ellie. Morning, Stephen. Look, I have been so vocal about the human rights record in, obviously, Saudi, in Qatar, in the UAE, in many of these Arab countries as well. And I think that the announcement yesterday, for me, was not a surprise. I was expecting something because of, look, we've had the Qatari World Cup in 2022, and I knew from that point onwards, from 2010, when the announcement for Qatar to host the World Cup in 2022 was made, I knew from that point onwards that this is going to be it's going to include all of the countries as well. It's not just going to end with Qatar hosting the World Cup and that was it. So I wasn't surprised, and I am disappointed, but I think that people like myself who are activists, who are commentators, who are campaigners, we speak to people on the ground. We speak to people who will be attending these football matches, who will be directly impacted. During the last World Cup, I spoke to members of the families of migrant workers who'd lost members of their family while working and building these stadiums in Qatar. And the same thing, sadly, is likely to happen in Saudi as well. But I think one thing that I picked up was there's such a passion for football amongst the Arab populations. They absolutely love football. It's their number one sport, followed by cricket. And it's not just football, by the way. If you think about it, there's, you've had boxing matches taking place in Saudi Arabia. You've had Formula One. That's a growing sport there as well. So there's a lot of people who are interested. They have money and they want to spend their money and they want to attend these events. And that is what FIFA and all these other organizations care about. They actually, for them, the bottom line is always profits, it's always money. It's about, how we can increase our funds coming in. So I think we're going to see a lot more of this, and which is sad as far as I'm concerned. But
all right, okay, Aisha. Let's leave it there because we're running out of time. We need to get Harry in on all of this. So it's all about the money, Harry, but it is a football-loving area.
It is, yeah. I've been to Saudi Arabia. I watched the England team play there many years ago. But you have to question whether people who run football at the highest level, FIFA in particular, have any moral compass whatsoever. There wasn't even an authentic vote for Saudi Arabia. And it put the Football Association here in an invidious position, because how could they abstain and then send the England team out to play there? We're also going to have a World Cup in January because it's 40 degrees out there in the summer. Again, going to completely disrupt the Premier League programme. And I don't think the European nations are going to put up with this a second time after the Qatari World Cup. Of course, we're seeing this kind of sports washing with Saudi Arabia. And in the last few years, they've had 900 sponsorship deals across sport in a variety of sports. And yes, we want to improve countries like Saudi Arabia and other Middle East countries with their political, religious and prejudices. So why isn't there a default system put into place whereby, OK, give Saudi Arabia the World Cup, but year on year ahead of the World Cup, they have to meet certain criteria on these particular issues that are worrying everybody. And if they fail, then Australia was willing to participate in the World Cup. And I have to ask this question, England is supposed to be the home of the World Cup, yet FIFA have not looked upon England as a potential candidate, and we've not had the World Cup since 1966, yet it goes to Saudi Arabia. I mean, what next? Iran, Lebanon, Syria? Where else do FIFA want to take the World Cup? This is something that has to be looked at very carefully.
Yeah, it's a valid point, very valid point. Look, really good to talk to you both this morning. Thank you very much indeed. I'm sure you're going to have a view. gbnews.com/yoursay.
And sticking with the sport theme, Paul Coit is going to be here in just a few moments. Do stay with us.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. There are delays of up to 2 hours to Stena Line sailings between Cairn Ryan and Belfast, with lorries being parked up at Castle Kennedy Airfield. The Port of Holyhead is closed for emergency repairs. Buses replace trains between Llandudno Junction and Blaenau Festiniog and between Swansea and Shrewsbury after the storms. In Norfolk, the A47 is closed southbound, heading away from Great Yarmouth towards Lowestoft after an accident last night. There are delays of up to 4 hours to Stena Line sailings between Fishguard and Rosslare. The M4 from Wiltshire into Berkshire is closed eastbound from junction 15 east of Swindon to 14 at Hungerford because of a spillage of hydraulic fluid. On the M4 in Berkshire, there's a lane closed westbound after an accident between junctions 7 and 8-9 from Slough to Maidenhead, causing delays. And trains into and out of Marylebone Station in London have been stopped because of a signalling problem.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, time for the sport with Paul Coit. Good morning.
I'm worried for Manchester City, I've got to tell you.
Oh, well, I'm worried now.
Are you? Are you worried?
Will they ever win again?
Well, I mean, honestly, what's going to happen to the club? It's a disaster. I mean, he's won 11 trophies under Pep, but things are turning. Juventus 2, Manchester City 0, 1 in 10.
What's gone wrong?
Well, it's a very tricky thing because, Ellie, if Pep knew, he'd probably do something about it. And it could be a number of things. You've got, firstly, Rodri, who makes a huge amount of difference, so they're missing him. Players are getting a little older now. I don't think they're quite as quick as they were. They've got full-back problems. I just think it's... And then the confidence... Whereas they'd always been going along, we can steamroller anybody. Now, I think it's beginning to get into their head a little.
Oh, I see.
I think it is.
Anyway, on to more important clubs, Paul, because I'm just giving you this along here.
Yep.
Spurs are playing tonight.
Spurs Rangers tonight.
Oh, are they? Right.
See, Ange Postecoglou is not really well liked by Celtic, beloved by Celtic, by Rangers, because of his Celtic connection from before. So anyway, they need to win. So as far as the Europa League, which it is, Rangers are in 8th, Spurs are in 9th, and it's the top 8 that will go straight through to qualify to then the knockout situation, whereas then it's 9 to 24 will then go forward and they have to play another couple of games. Well, against one team, so home and away. So that's tonight. Victoria Plzen from against Manchester United. Do you know where they're from?
Germany.
No.
Czech Republic.
Oh, yes.
Close. And in the Conference League, Chelsea are heading to Astana in Kazakhstan. 8-hour journey, two ways, so they're leaving a lot of players at home. I don't think it's a competition they're really bothered in winning, to be honest with you.
No.
They've got bigger fish to fry, but they're in it, so they've got to do what they can.
Now, what's going on with Luke Littler?
Yeah, well, Luke Littler, the World Darts Championship starts next week. So he's a superstar. I mean, I still can't believe he's 17. I still can't believe he's 17.
I swear he's been 17 for about 10 years.
I know, but it was this time last year, we'd not heard of him. Nobody knew who he was, went to the World Championship as a 16-year-old, but now he's got a big sponsor. Everybody's throwing money at him. Xbox, shall I show you the ad?
Oh,
Do you want to see the advert? Have a look and see they're trying to make Luke look cool. Well, have a see what you think.
3, 2, 1
Oh dear, so he's a meteor.
Yes. Because when you nuke Luke the nuke, and he's got dirt all over his face as well.
Yeah, why is he
And
dirty?
people are so surprised. I don't really know. I think it's probably he's travelled from outer space and it's dirty up there. And people are watching him throw darts. He's throwing treble 20s. It's like, wow, but that's what he does. So there we are, and it's Luke the Nuke, and it's...
I mean, how that sells an Xbox, I do not know.
They haven't spent a lot of money on it, have they? Just
I don't think so.
A room with dirt on his face.
I think they did it with... I think they dirt up his face, throw a few darts, and then film it on an iPhone. But anyway, you know,
I wonder if it works. I wonder if it works.
But I'll tell you one thing, though, is that of all the, whether we say athletes or sports people, apparently he was the most Googled in 2024.
I bet.
So, you know, he's
good on him.
Hugely successful.
He's a brilliant darts player, a terrible actor. But if someone's throwing that much money at him to be in an advert, good on him.
He's 17, you know, he's got a long time to learn the acting.
You make the most of it, Luke.
He's living the dream, isn't he?
Yes, absolutely.
Poison, thank you.
Pleasure.
See you later on. Right, I've got the papers in just a moment with Rani Honderkamp and Susie Stride.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
My next guest's book will certainly provoke you. Lord Sarch's book, Orgasm, probes 21 such ideas, chapter by chapter, in a stimulating reading experience, covering subjects from geopolitics and etiquette to the economy and the afterlife. Maurice Sarchi argues that rigorous thinking can create a blissful mental experience.
Well, the title is Orgasm, and I try to investigate the question of whether it's possible for there to be an orgasm of the mind which is equal in bliss to a physical orgasm. That's very interesting. And theoretically, the way that arises, I'll finish. Theoretically, the way that arises is by addressing conflicting ideas and then for there to be a revelation of true wisdom. That's the purpose of the book. And I think you can sum up British politics completely in 2 sentences. You'll understand very well, Michael. Conservatives are efficient but cruel. Labour is caring but incompetent. So you can see there that if you have a situation in which the Conservative Party turns out to be, in people's opinion, inefficient and cruel, well, then you're likely to have a very bad election result, which is exactly what we just did. And why?
So you have quite a lot to say to Kemi Badenoch. I mean, the first thing you'd say to her would be, read my book, please, I suppose.
Well, that's absolutely the first thing. It's a perfect Christmas present for her to give, as I was saying. So that's number one. So after she's done that, well, then her level of wisdom, which I'm sure is already very high, will be greatly increased, and she'll be able to address the complex, provocative, controversial issues aired in this book.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Right, time for the papers this morning with Rani Honderkamp and Susie Stride. Good morning to you both. Susie, let's look at the mail, should we? Children and mobile phones.
Yeah.
As you put your phone down.
Yes, but I'm using it in a limited capacity to look up things. Yeah, this is really interesting. So Channel 4 have done this documentary in Essex where children have given up their phones for 21 days.
How did that go down?
Well, what's fascinating is you know, sleep improving, mental health improving, anxiety levels. I mean, this is all stuff we know going down. And basically what they're talking about is that 1/5 of children spending more than 6 hours on their phone, which is basically equivalent to how much time they're spending in schools. Yeah. And, yeah, I mean, I just think it's kind of shocking, but it's not, because we know this is happening. But I think we do need to do something about it. I think it's a big problem.
So I absolutely agree. And the thing is, Susie said it, we know this. The evidence is really clear, the damage that these phones are doing. But we're not going to win this by banning phones. We need to win this at parent level. And when I see parents who have got toddlers in pushchairs with a very harmless-looking little Coco Melon cartoon on singing songs at them, my heart breaks. Because what that child actually needs is their parent looking at them and talking to them. But I'm not blaming parents for that. I don't think they really understand. And if we can just explain to them that the reason we've got this exponential rise in diagnoses like ADHD is because when a child is used to swiping every 10 seconds and getting a dopamine hit, when they then have to sit in a classroom and listen to a teacher talking about history for half an hour, they can't, because they're not getting the dopamine hit, so they start misbehaving. We are doing this to children. We are the adults in the room. It's time for us to step back in and say no. And I remember when my son was about 11 and phones started coming around and I wouldn't let him have one. And he'd say, but you've got one. And I'd just say to him, because my brain is grown, yours isn't.
Yeah, well, look, I think there's a lot to be said for all of that. Something needs to be done, but I doubt anything will be.
Renee, let's have a look at this story, shall we? Strikes over 2.8% pay rise for medics and teachers inevitable.
Oh, who could have thought that this might happen? And I go back to my previous point about negotiating. Labour came in like school playground politic people, you know, university people, and they gave in to the doctors and gave them a massive pay rise. They gave in to other civil servants, train drivers, and gave them a massive pay rise. And now, quelle surprise, other medical workers and other drivers of trains say, well, no, hang on a minute, I want what they've got. And what they've done is they've created a situation where we are going to have now, across all of next year and for as long as they hold out, strike after strike after strike. I'm not going to blame the nurses, because when I saw that doctor's pay rise, I thought, oh, if I was a nurse who'd settled for that, I'd be really unhappy. So Labour only have themselves to blame for this. And we are in for some very torrid times when it comes to strikes.
Susie?
I mean, I think it's interesting, this about the police staff strike, you know, and I actually think, you know, them being told they need to be in the office more, I actually think that is right. You know, 'cause, I mean, we've discussed this before, but this thing of, you know, teachers don't get that option, nurses don't get that option, and this, you know, this thing of, you know, them spending, you know, as little as 2 days in the office, and so a strike over that. I mean, look, I have complete compassion if you know, maybe you've got a disability, or maybe there's, I don't know, other reasons why you may need to, you know, have allowances. But I think it's really important, especially, you know, crime's not in a great place in this country, you know, whatever. I think that is important, and I don't think that is actually grounds for striking.
No, what about this idea, though, that Labour's opened the floodgates?
Well, I obviously don't agree with that, because I do think, look, I think it's important that people are paid properly. This is a different thing. People being back in the office after some of what happened in COVID, where there was, you know, in some ways this culture of being like, we're going to work from home. And I think, and the other thing, I mean, I don't know if we're going to come on to the story, but this axing of civil servants. I mean, look, the fact is, you know, we need to have efficiency. We need to have productivity. There obviously are issues around this. I mean, look, you know, I think it's like 200... Yeah.
Train drivers.
Yeah.
Who were already on a basic salary of £65,000 were given a nearly 15% pay rise.
Yeah.
We are now paying the price of it, because now every other worker, civil servant, wants that. We can't afford it. We are sending our pensioners in to die in the winter without their winter fuel allowance. Our small businesses are going bust. We can't afford it. But Labour did it. They opened the floodgates when they came in within weeks and gave these massive pay rises.
Yeah, look, I don't think all pay rises should happen, but I think, for example, nurses, teachers, doctors, like some of what's happened there is absolutely right, needs to happen. We were seeing a mass exodus from... I mean, I've worked frontline in schools for 20 years. Mass exodus from schools of teachers. One of the most important things in this country is education. It is like the building block, and basically it has been utterly eroded. So I think in certain places you need to have those measures. In other places, I think there have been unfair things have happened, and so I agree with you on that. But I would definitely not apologise for pay rises for nurses, teachers, doctors, etc.
Does it need need to come with a productivity agreement, though? So instead of just shelling out pay rises for train drivers, for example, well, first of all, the trains need to run on time.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's a few things here, isn't there? I think that ultimately, I mean, I don't know whether it'd be a productivity agreement or what, but, you know, I think it is important. I mean, again, going back to Whitehall, I think there is a problem there. You know, this massive increase, which actually came from COVID and Brexit, where the civil service almost doubled in number, but actually efficiency is not there, productivity is not there. And I think Pat McFadden, I think they're going to do the business on this, and I think it is important.
Or is that, I mean, would you agree with what the government seems to want to do on civil service?
Well, they're not going to do the business, are they? Because when the Tories were in power...
10,000 jobs gone.
10,000. Tories had a plan for 66,000 to go, and Labour scrapped that as soon as they got in, 10,000. So we're going to take it from 513,000 down by 10. In 2016, there were 380,000 civil servants, and since 2016, services have only got worse.
Well, it's possibly a fair point. Yeah, I mean, it's all... with all of this, so it's hard to know where you draw the line, because if you don't... If the government hadn't given in on some of these issues, would we still be having, you know, constant rail strikes and all the rest of it?
But we've still got constant rail strikes. So Avanti West are striking now over Christmas and New Year to disrupt everybody. We've still got them. They did the train drivers deal with no caveats or conditions.
Right, there we've got to leave it. Thank you very much indeed, ladies.
Thank you very much. Let's have a look at the weather now with Honor.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. So it's another grey and cloudy day ahead, likely to see some patchy rain and drizzle at times, and temperatures really struggling under cloudier skies. So a grey start for many of us, those outbreaks of rain and drizzle just starting to creep into eastern areas, moving their way inland through the course of the day. Should stay largely dry across western parts of England and Wales. Still a cloudy picture here though. The best of the brightness likely across northeastern parts of Scotland, western parts of Northern Ireland, where we may see some brighter spells, but in general temperatures really struggling under those cloudier skies, highs of between 8 to 10 Celsius in the far southeast. So to end the day then, there's still going to be plenty of cloud, quite cloudy across western parts of Scotland, but there will be some clearer spells across the far north, inland areas of Scotland too, but that's where it's going to turn particularly chilly overnight, and we may start to see some freezing fog patches develop too. Some clearer skies just to the west of Northern Ireland, but overall the bulk of the country seeing a very cloudy end to the day. Outbreaks of rain and drizzle still feeding their way into western parts of the country too. And then overnight, we don't really see much change. That cloud is going to stick around. That's going to keep things fairly mild. Still those outbreaks of rain and drizzle continuing. We may still see some clearer spells once again across parts of Northern Ireland, parts of northeast Scotland, but turning chilly here. And as I say, under those clear skies, we may start to see some fog, perhaps freezing fog patches develop by the morning. But elsewhere, fairly cloudy, and after a fairly mild night too, it is going to be another cloudy picture as we head into the end of the week. Rain and drizzle continuing, perhaps being a bit more widespread compared to Thursday. A few more western areas seeing those outbreaks of rain and drizzle. And once again, the best of the brightness, eastern parts of Northern Ireland, northeastern parts of Scotland, but to the northwest, some longer spells of rain and starting to turn quite blustery here too. And highs once again of around 7 to 8 Celsius.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. There are delays of up to 2 hours to Stena Line sailings between Cairnryan and Belfast, with lorries heading to the port being parked up at Castle Kennedy Airfield. The port of Holyhead is closed for emergency repairs. Buses replace trains between Blaenau, Festiniog and Llandudno, and also between Swansea and Shrewsbury after the storms. From Norfolk into Suffolk, the A47 is closed southbound, heading away from Great Yarmouth towards Lowestoft after an accident last night. There are delays of up to 4 hours to Stena Line sailings between Fishguard and Rosslare. The M4 from Wiltshire into Berkshire is closed eastbound from junction 15 east of Swindon to 14 at Hungerford because of a spillage of hydraulic fluid. Trains into and out of Marylebone Station in London are suspended because of a signalling problem, and in Kent the A2 is closed each way off the A20 in Dover after an accident and fuel spill last night. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Imagine getting the call to tell you luck.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. Sara Sharif was failed.
Those are the words of the Children's Commissioner as the parents of the 10-year-old were found guilty of her murder.
Well, serious questions now being asked as to how her father was given shared custody of her, despite it being known that he abused her siblings for years.
Angela Rayner will press ahead with plans to prioritise house building in areas of the Green Belt, insisting there is no alternative to large-scale development in the countryside around big cities.
The Prime Minister will today meet the European Council President, where he will hold talks on defence cooperation with the EU.
Thousands of veterans who were ejected from the military because of their sexual orientation or gender identity will be able to receive up to £70,000 each in compensation in order to correct historic wrongs. That's a 50% rise to the financial recognition scheme.
Now, it's Christmas party season, which means perhaps a few festive faux pas, put it very politely, may occur. How do we deal with them, especially the morning after? We're going to be joined by an etiquette expert.
And are you cooking Christmas on a budget? We're going to be joined by TV chef Rosemary Schrager for her festive tips.
And in sport, the Manchester City crisis continues as they lose to Juventus in the Champions League, while Arsenal dispatch Monaco. All British Europa League clash tonight as Rangers play Spurs, and unless I'm mistaken, Saudi Arabia are announced as the 2034 World Cup hosts by Huey Green's Clapometer.
Hello there, good morning. Another cloudy and grey day ahead with some rain and drizzle at times. Some brighter weather too. I'll be here later with all the details.
Just gone 8 o'clock, I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast. We're talking to Rosemary Schrager later, the TV chef, about cooking on a budget at Christmas. If you are hosting, do you charge?
No.
No.
No, that's what I think. I think it's mad.
Why? What?
So there's a study out in one of the papers today that's saying that almost half of men think that you should charge for Christmas dinner, and something like 64% of women think you should charge per head as well, because it's a huge expense.
You make a, I mean, you could make a donation, but you don't, and say, oh, I'm happy to help out.
You should be
but you don't
charging per
charge.
Head. Yeah, apparently the majority of Brits think you should charge per head.
Oh,
to have people over for Christmas dinner, because it's a huge expense.
Don't be
We're in
ridiculous.
a cost of living crisis.
It is a huge expense, but if that's the case, then every family your little family, do your own, and then meet up after dinner.
Yeah. You know, the friend of mine, I was only speaking to him about this last week. I remember him telling me he was invited to a New Year's party on his street, and all the street was invited. And they said, oh, you know, we'd love you to come along. We've got this New Year's party. Thank you very much. It'll be £20 each. And this is to go to a house...
Like a ticketed event?
Yeah, but this is to go... And it's absolutely outrageous.
I think it's outrageous.
I think if you're hosting a party, you pay for the party, right? And the same thing applies for...
You don't charge people to come to your party.
You can't afford to put on a party, or you can't afford to put on a large Christmas dinner for lots of people, don't do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't do it. Just say, can't afford it this year.
Or would you say, if you really want it, you say, well, look, it's costing... Maybe you could help out a little bit, but you don't say, I'm going to charge you this. It's unbelievable.
Give them a bill at the end.
I know, can you imagine? Oh, by the way, service charge on that as well.
Yeah.
You only have to provide for... If you're hosting a party, you only have to provide a few cans of beer and a packet of peanuts, and everyone brings something, don't they?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
That's a good idea.
You don't go to a party without taking a bottle of wine or a can of beer or whatever.
But that's a good idea for Christmas. Get everyone to bring a dish.
Oh, you see, I wouldn't
Someone
like that.
does the puddings.
No, I wouldn't like that.
You wouldn't do that?
No, I wouldn't do that.
I've never hosted Christmas, so I don't know.
It is hard work.
Is it?
It is hard work and it is expensive, but you tend to share, don't you? You tend to do, well, we'll do it one year, you do it the next year. Whatever, it all gets spread around.
That's probably the answer. Well, let us know what you think. Would you charge Christmas dinner in your house? Do you do it? tvnews.com/you'll say.
Now, after years of what prosecutors called horrific abuse, 3 members of Sara Sharif's family have been found guilty over her death.
Yes, her father and her stepmother were convicted of her murder, while her uncle was found guilty of allowing her to die.
The 10-year-old suffered unimaginable violence, with the conviction sparking calls for urgent reform in child protection.
Well, following the verdict, the Children's Commissioner has said the law must change, that children who are suspected victims of abuse cannot be home educated.
Earlier, we were joined by the CEO and founder of Freedom from Abuse, Marilyn Hawes.
Father said he legally punished his daughter. This is not legal in the UK. And I'm wondering, and I did read a report by Will Forster, the MP for Woking, who said also, were there cultural sensitivities in this case? And we've got to stop this. We have laws in the UK. And the homeschooling, there are some excellent homeschooling schoolers out there. But this is where abusive parents do hide away. But also, just take a look at homeschooling. How do we know the children are receiving the adequate education? But there should be a registration, there should be checks, just as there is within the education system itself. And then we go on to the family courts. Well, the family courts are supposed to be there for the voice of the child to be heard. Well, the voice of the child isn't heard. What's heard are very often social workers who have been manipulated by abusive parents to let the child, and this is what happened in this case, the social worker recommended, even though the social worker knew this man had a history of violence, recommended to the court that go back to the father. This is nonsense. The family courts are a shambles. I can tell you that now. Time and again, they are failing. But everyone has got blood on their hands here. I do not believe the neighbours didn't hear, because here I have a report that says neighbours heard smacking and yelling, as did other neighbours. They were known to be a concern, but no one bothered to phone the police or social services. Now, the neighbours, now I was a teacher in a school, as you know. I personally would have taken, against all the policies, I would have taken that child to the hospital myself if I had any instinct that there is something fundamentally wrong here, and there was. So you've got people that don't speak out, you've got family courts that are not fit for purpose, you've got homeschooling that needs another review. It is just shocking. And, people have got to forget some of these policies and multi-agencies. There's too many cooks in the kitchen.
It's just such a horrific story, isn't it? Just awful. And if you read into the detail, it's just hard to believe that this ever happened.
But here we are again.
So many failings, time after time, isn't it?
Yeah, but this is it. But these cases happen every few years, and there's outrage, and things must change, and things have to be done, and then You know, 4 years later, here we are again, doing it. You know, it's the same call. So why does nothing, as Marilyn says, why does nothing change? Marilyn says nothing will change.
But so much needs to change. I mean, looking at the detail of this case, social services were alerted, the police were alerted, the teachers were alerted. I mean, so many different spaces were there in order to protect her, and they all failed somewhere along the line.
Interesting. What Marilyn was saying was stuff about, you know, we as individuals need to get in. We all look at this as saying what an awful situation that was, but it's about us as individuals. If you hear something going on in a house repeatedly, you know, that you're next door to or whatever, then why aren't we ringing the police?
Yeah.
We don't want to get involved.
Yeah.
I get that, but actually,
There's a real Britishness to that as well, isn't
yeah,
there?
but we've got to step up to the plate.
Especially when it's children involved. Anyway, let us know what you think on that horrific story. gbnews.com/you'll say.
Right, the Prime Minister is vowing to override blockers and put builders first as he prepares to unveil sweeping changes to the planning process.
Well, the new plans could mean increased developments on the green belts, though the government has pledged to prioritise brownfield sites.
The plans have already been met with criticism. The Shadow Housing Secretary, Kevin Hollinrake, accusing Labour of bulldozing through the concerns of local communities.
But the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, sees it as a landmark overhaul.
We think this will streamline the system because there's far too much delays at the moment, and therefore by having the policy framework nationally and the local plan means that you can plan for the houses in the place where local people have identified they want it, and more importantly make sure we deliver the infrastructure alongside that.
Well, the Prime Minister is also continuing what he's calling a reset of relations between the EU and the UK.
Well, that's as Sir Keir Starmer prepares to meet with European Council President Antonio Costa.
All right, let's talk to our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, who's here. Morning, Catherine. Let's talk planning, should we, to kick off with. Everyone agrees there needs to be more houses, but it's how you go about it, isn't it? And this idea now that Greenbelt could go is going to upset a lot of people. Because it seems like they're sort of saying almost everything just needs to be rubber stamped and it will be built.
Yes. Clearly, there is a housing crisis. Lots of young people can't afford to buy property well into their 30s. That's having an impact on when people can settle down and have children. So it has a massive effect. But, of course, so often people do not want these developments close to where they are. So we will get the detail of this when it's published around lunchtime today. But basically, it sounds like what the government want to do is, yes, give approval for brownfield sites, but also look at bits of the green belt that they can classify as grey belt, things like disused petrol stations and so on and so forth, and build on those. Now, of course, there will be a lot of opposition, but the government are pretty much saying that they are going to take on the blockers, that they are going to override local objections if need be. Now, the Conservatives are saying that they're going to bulldoze the concerns of local communities. And also, this target, 1.5 million homes over the Parliament, is going to be very difficult to hit. But even if they do hit it, given as net migration is about 750,000 people coming in every year more than leaving, so many of those houses are needed that even if they do build 300,000 a year, there's still going to be a massive, massive shortage.
It's an ambitious plan, isn't it? 1.5 million new homes in 5 years. But then you have to take into account the infrastructure that you need on top of that, so doctors, surgeries and roads. We've been hearing about this in the golden rules for building on the grey belt. I mean, that will need even more money, won't it?
Yes, so we will see later, but these golden rules will mean that developers can't just plonk down hundreds of houses in an area without thought of the facilities needed. So, as you say, doctors, GPs, nurseries, all of these things are needed. Suggestions too that there will be more focus on houses being built in area of the greatest need, where they are most expensive. So potentially in the southeast of England. And of course, there's many what were previously Conservative seats who have now gone over to Labour. So these Labour MPs may find that there will be quite a lot of opposition. And this is always what happens, isn't it? Local opposition. But the government are basically saying that these houses are going to be built regardless.
Kevin Hollinrake was telling us earlier on that the sort of targets have been dropped, so that in the sense that it's less ambitious targets for places around London than it is for places perhaps in the northwest or northeast.
Well, that is the opposite of what the government have briefed. So when this is published, it will be fascinating to see. But I think, the Tories said, oh, look, we built 1 million homes in the last Parliament. 1.5 million is very, very ambitious. They're not going to be able to do that without changing some of the rules. My understanding is that there will be mandatory targets for councils. The Tories tried that. There was huge opposition under Rishi Sunak. Ultimately, those mandatory targets were dropped. So there's still a lot of uncertainty, but this will be being published this lunchtime and people will be poring over it to see the details.
What I don't understand with this, and let me know what you think at home as well on this one, is that, yes, it's hugely difficult because stuff needs to be built, people don't want it next to them. We all get that. It's this awful dilemma. But this seems to be a case of the government going, well, actually, you've got no say in it. You can't object to it. You can't object to the planning process. You can't go to your council and make a representation. You, as the British people, have no say in this whatsoever. It is just going to happen.
It's difficult to see how they could take it as far as that. They're clearly saying that locals are going to have less powers to object, but people surely will still have the right to make their views known. But I do think it's potentially a headache for lots of newly elected Labour MPs in constituencies who this target, I mean, it basically depends. If you have a house, you may be very worried about loads of other houses popping up. But if you are the generation that realises that they can't afford property potentially till their 30s or even longer, you're going to take a very different view of this. And I think one of the positives that was seen when Labour were running for election was this promise to get Britain building, but of course the reality of that is probably going to upset a lot of people.
And just briefly, Keir Starmer continuing his reset of relations with the EU today. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yes, so he's been to various European capitals, Paris, Berlin, Rome and so on, multiple times actually since he was elected. Today this is happening in Downing Street. He is meeting the European Council President, Antonio Costa, talking about this reset. There will clearly be a lot of focus on security and defence, particularly because of what's happened in Syria. And also, of course, we've got Donald Trump incoming in January, what that means for European defence, but also trading relations. They want a closer trading relationship, but the European Union is most certainly going to want something in return for that. We know they're very keen on some sort of youth mobility scheme. The government at the moment saying they're not budging on that, but I think watch this space on that.
OK. Catherine, thank you.
Well, this all leads into our poll of the day, which today we're asking, do you support Angela Rayner's Green Belt development plan to build 1.5 million homes? As always, we'll bring you the live results throughout the day, so make sure you stay tuned. And the final results will be announced later in Martin Daubney's show. For all of the latest polls, news and how to vote, just go to gbnews.com/poll, or you can scan the QR code, which was just on your screen, which is now
gone. OK, let's look at the weather for you with Anna.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. So it's another grey and cloudy day ahead, likely to see some patchy rain and drizzle at times, and temperatures really struggling under cloudier skies. So a grey start for many of us. Those outbreaks of rain and drizzle just starting to creep into eastern areas, moving their way inland through the course of the day. Should stay largely dry across western parts of England and Wales. Still a cloudy picture here though. The best of the brightness likely across northeastern parts of Scotland, western parts of Northern Ireland, where we may see some brighter spells. But in general, temperatures really struggling under those cloudier skies, highs of between 8 to 10 Celsius in the far southeast. So to end the day then, there's still going to be plenty of cloud, quite cloudy across western parts of Scotland, but there will be some clearer spells across the far north, inland areas of Scotland too, but that's where it's going to turn particularly chilly overnight, and we may start to see some freezing fog patches develop too. Some clearer skies just to the west of Northern Ireland, but overall the bulk of the country seeing a very cloudy end to the day. Outbreaks of rain and drizzle still feeding their way into western parts of the country too. And then overnight, we don't really see much change. That cloud is going to stick around. That's going to keep things fairly mild. Still those outbreaks of rain and drizzle continuing. We may still see some clearer spells once again across parts of Northern Ireland, parts of northeast Scotland, but turning chilly here. And as I say, under those clear skies, we may start to see some fog, perhaps freezing fog patches develop by the morning. But elsewhere, fairly cloudy, and after a fairly mild night too, it is going to be another cloudy picture as we head into the end of the week. Rain and drizzle continuing, perhaps being a bit more widespread compared to Thursday. A few more western areas seeing those outbreaks of rain and drizzle. And once again, the best of the brightness, eastern parts of Northern Ireland, northeastern parts of Scotland, but to the northwest, some longer spells of rain and starting to turn quite blustery here too. And highs once again of around 7 to 8 Celsius.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now it's time for our massive giveaway. It is a big one, but before you give me the details, just have a guess. Who's going to be having a fabulous Christmas this year?
I don't know. Who's going to be having a fabulous Christmas
Well, let me
this
tell
year?
you, it's Cliff and Julie from Essex who won Christmas on GB News. Here's what they had to say about it.
My name is Cliff.
And my name is Julie. And we won £25,500 gift voucher and a GB News goodie bag.
When my phone rang, I was on cloud nine. I couldn't even finish my job.
Amazing, just the best feeling ever.
We can get everything we want. We can buy presents for friends and family.
I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it. But we're glued to GB News. It's the best station ever.
Merry Christmas, GB News!
We love you!
We love you too.
There are no two more deserving people than Cliff and Julie.
You just like them because they're from Essex.
It's true, but it'd be the same with you. If they
were from the Furness Peninsula, I'd be there.
Barrow Furness.
Well done to them. If you want to, though, beat them,
double.
You can. It's not a competition, but you could win twice as much. Our £50,000 tax-free cash giveaway. Here's how you enter.
Imagine getting the call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year. Luck.
Yes, best of luck to you.
Best of luck to you, yes. Now, the Defence Secretary, Jonathan Healey, is set to launch a £75 million redress scheme for veterans who suffered under the ban on LGBT personnel in the Army.
Well, the policy, which lasted up until the year 2000, meant that members of the armed forces who were or were thought to be gay, bi or transgender were subjected to interrogation and then dismissal.
Well, joining us now in the studio is GB News reporter Charlie Peters. Good to see you, Charlie. And most people would say, well, thank goodness it's taken so long.
Yeah, and it wasn't just harassment, investigation and dismissal, but also prison. The last service person to go to prison of being found guilty of being homosexual was in 1993. Found guilty at a court-martial. This RAF personnel was sent to prison for a period. Found guilty of what was then considered in the service to be a crime. Even though that was decriminalised in Britain from 1967, it remained against service law until the year 2000, quite a lengthy period after the mood and the law had changed in the country. So the National Audit Office thinks that around 4,000 personnel could be able to access some of this compensation from this scheme, which does open on Friday. Originally, it was going to be £50 million, but it's been raised to £75 million. And there'll be £50,000 for people who were dismissed from their service, as we've just been told, for any period, and also a restitution of your rank and your medals. Some people, when they were found guilty, and it's a shame to use that term now, but when they were found guilty, they had their medals literally ripped from their chest in the court-martial. So many soldiers and officers have fought to have their medals returned. That's been an ongoing process. Various ministers, like the former Veterans Minister and of course, the former Prime Minister, have apologised for this after a review by Lord Etherton, who was England and Wales's first openly gay judge. He found that there was this history of abuse and harassment in the military. But beyond that 50,000, there's also that additional £20,000 for members of the forces who weren't dismissed, but did face harassment and really intrusive investigations. Because some people, when they were suspected of being gay, service police and other troops would bug their rooms, go through their possessions, follow them around the camp. It created an extremely hostile situation for many service personnel, and as a consequence, up to 4,000, some in government expect, could access this redress scheme.
Yeah, there will be people, though, who say, well, it's a long time ago. Why spend this sort of money now?
I suppose the government wants to right the wrongs of the past, and the fact that so many people... It is a long time ago, but a lot of people are still living with this, actually. And I'm looking at some of the testimony I've read since I saw this was going to be released today. It's heartbreaking. You know, it's men and women who were kicked out of the service for no fault of their own, something natural and legitimate, and then suffering for years for having a criminal record, something which would never be a crime in civilian life, but it is in military life. They then struggle to find work. Many people reporting panic attacks, depression and anxiety, living with shame that they would never have felt had they not served their country. And what's really powerful, reading all those accounts, is how many men and women who went through that punishment from the state still say they were proud to serve their country, even though the military let them down. I think many people will be watching this and thinking, it's quite right they get compensation after what they've suffered, both during service and out of it.
OK. Charlie, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you. And for many of those people, you'd imagine that the money just isn't enough, is it? No money will ever be enough for the humiliation and shame that they felt at the time, or made to feel at the time. Awful. And it's recent history as well.
Well, it is, yeah. Right, still to come, Christmas party season, which also means some work party slip-ups. We're going to be talking to an etiquette expert about how to deal with yourself at a Christmas party and how to deal with the things that happen afterwards.
Yes, that's next.
Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan from 8 p.m.
You know, whenever I want to have a laugh, I will fire up a Ricky Gervais special on Netflix. He's funny, isn't he? Very politically incorrect. I might watch a vintage episode of Fawlty Towers if it hasn't been cancelled. Or I could just read up on the latest musings from the Welsh Labour government. And this week they have waged war on the countryside, which is apparently unwelcoming to British people of colour. Well, it's true, isn't it? I mean, those racial checkpoints in the Wye Valley are completely unacceptable. And the snowy bits of Mount Snowdon scream white privilege. Can you believe this story? It's proof, if you needed it, that Welsh Labour are barking mad and talking a load of shih tzu.
I think what's so interesting about this, I mean, this is an absurd question. This is ridiculous. Obviously, dogs and the countryside are not inherently racist. I think this entire connection between what is effective cultural Marxism, in addition to what is effective socialism, that is at the heart of Welsh Labour and many other hard left groups in the United Kingdom.
I got to do a correction
Go
because
on.
it's not Welsh Labour. It was one little thinky tanky that did some research. I know it was taxpayer funded, but it was just a suggestion. Welsh Labour have not gone, yes, that's a good idea. This research, which I wholly agree is quite absurd, was done by interviewing the 4% ethnic minorities of Wales, and they came out with the fact that they don't feel welcome in green spaces because there are so many dogs, and that's how this was born. I mean, I don't know whether that makes it make any more sense.
And the fact that taxpayers are footing the bill for research like this is the real scandal. We had this earlier conversation about the National Health Service, where all of our money is going and being wasted, and it is also being wasted on absolute nonsense like this.
GB News, the People's Chat.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, it's Christmas party season, and as well as a festive celebration, a mix of alcohol and merry spirits.
Merry spirits?
Merry spirits.
Oh, I see. I thought you meant spirits as in drink.
Oh, no, you've got alcohol on the brain.
I have, yeah.
No, spirits, you know, to be in the festive mood.
Oh, I see.
Yes, but it can lead to one or two awkward moments.
Yes, mishaps. Let's put it that way. They can leave us wondering how to salvage the situation when confronted by the elephant in the room the next morning in the office.
Yes, well, to help us navigate these festive faux pas and share expert tips on how to handle them with grace, we're joined by etiquette expert Diana Mathers. Good to see you, Diana.
And good to see you too.
Good to see you. What is it about the Christmas party that just makes people lose all sensibility?
I don't know, because as you say, other office parties are not as bad, but the Christmas party certainly seems to be the one where people sort of let go. I think there's a feeling of goodwill. So I suppose they think they can be perhaps a bit more friendly than they are usually because it is Christmas time. And also perhaps more alcohol is drunk and drunk quite quickly. So I think we do have to be careful. My tip for that is to try and have a glass of water at least every other glass of wine, so that you keep yourself hydrated and keeping your brain somewhere in gear.
Which is a very good idea. The problem you've got with that, though, Diana, is that, and it's a thing these days, isn't it? People go out wanting to get drunk.
Yes, they do. They do. And therefore, you just got to hope that nothing happens that's too awful and that you really regret the day after. But people do want to have a good time. You're absolutely right. And they should have a good time at Christmas. But just try and stop or think, or if you see a friend going really over the top, perhaps try and say something tactfully to perhaps they ought to just calm down a bit.
Should people, Diana, even be getting drunk at their work Christmas party, or should they see it as an extension of being at work?
I think that really depends on the company. Some companies really want their staff to have a very good time, let their hair down. Sometimes the directors let their hair down as well. But otherwise, people are watching you, especially if you're in line for promotion, you behave really badly, it could affect it. So I think you have got to think carefully about your office environment and, you know, what the norm is for Christmas parties as well.
What do you do the following morning, especially if, I don't know, somebody's got a little bit too friendly? which is obviously regretted the next morning. But how do you deal with that?
I think you've got to, the best thing is to come straight out and say, look, I'm really sorry. I think I probably went over the top last night. It was the Christmas spirit, and I hope you're not offended. Or, you know, sort of, I didn't mean anything by it, or whatever. I mean, it depends really if you're going to photocopy your private parts, then that is really going far too far. But if you've just perhaps given somebody a small kiss under the mistletoe, on the other hand, if you snog them in a corner, then you could really have a problem, especially if they've got other partners.
Yes.
I'm just shocked by your photocopy revelation, Diana. Dear me. I haven't even thought of that one.
Of course, I am the absolute paragon of etiquette of any Christmas parties. But no, our company is only small, and we have a wonderful Christmas lunch. But I have heard from friends that certain things used to go on. I think people are actually slightly better behaved now. I think they really are than they used to be, say, 20, 30 years ago.
Oh, I don't know the things I've heard.
Really?
We don't go to Christmas parties, Diana.
We didn't go, so we're in your good books, Diana.
Yeah. All right, well, that's some very sound advice there. Thank you very much indeed. Just be sensible if you've got a Christmas party coming up this weekend.
Drink your water, have a very large meal before you go.
Oh, yes, and just don't...
You don't drink, so you'll be fine.
Yeah, I'll be fine. Don't be overly friendly with anybody. You know what I mean?
Good advice.
Paul Coyte's going to be here with all your sport in just a moment.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. There are delays of up to 2 hours to Stena Line sailings between Cairnryan and Belfast, and up to an hour to P&O Irish Sea sailings between Cairnryan and Larne, with lorries heading to the port being parked up at Castle Kennedy Airfield. Now, the port of Holyhead is closed for emergency repairs. Buses replaced trains again today between Llandudno and Blaenau Festiniog, and between Swansea and Shrewsbury. From Norfolk into Suffolk, the A47 is closed southbound, heading away from Great Yarmouth towards Lowestoft after an accident last night. There are delays of up to 4 hours to Stena Line sailings between Fishguard and Rosslare. The M4 from Wiltshire into Berkshire is closed eastbound from junction 15 east of Swindon to 14 at Hungerford because of a spillage of hydraulic fluid. Train services into and out of Marylebone Station in London are suspended because of a signalling problem. In Kent, the A2 is closed off the A20 at Dover after an accident and fuel spill last night.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30am.
Only on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9pm. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's sports time. Paul Coyte's here with us. What have you got for us? Probably our safest.
How about the Champions League? How about the Champions League? I'll let you into what was going on. It was like, what are we doing? Are we doing Champions League? Are we doing Champions League? And did I give eyes that said, I'm not really sure?
You did.
Refused to answer.
Oh, did I? I'm sorry. Champions
League.
Juventus 2, Manchester City 0. I was hoping for a little pep. I don't know whether we've got pep. It's a crisis there. It's a disaster. It's not going well. What have they got? The UB40 score? They have.
1 in 10.
They've won 1 in 10, and that's how things are going at the moment for Man City. And it's the Manchester derby at the weekend, so they play Manchester United. Yeah.
Very good.
So not going very well for Pep. Arsenal beat Monaco 3-0 tonight. Rangers Spurs, which is at Ibrox, and Rangers are 8th in the Europa League, Spurs are 9th, and the top 8 qualify.
So they've got to win.
3 games to go for each of them. Victoria Plzeň and we'll be playing Manchester United from the Czech Republic and Astana from Kazakhstan. Chelsea have got to travel all the way to Kazakhstan for the Astana game, and that's in the Conference League. Do you want to play birthdays?
Oh, yeah. Go on.
Yeah,
play the birthdays? I could talk about
I
the
feel
World
like
Cup.
Stephen's getting really good at this, though.
You know what? I think so too, and this is why these are quite tricky.
Right,
so, Ellie, if you do need any help, just give me the nod.
All right.
OK, first one. Who is this? How old are they today? Sporting legends. We are going back a bit. Now, look, I know you're thinking that's probably me. I know that's what you're thinking, but no, it's not. Now, look at those sideburns.
Well,
the legendary sideburns.
driver.
He's a racing driver. World champion 1972 and 1974, the Brazilian Emerson Fittipaldi.
Well, that was the year you were born.
Look at that.
Fittipaldi,
yes.
I know the name.
He looks a cool guy, doesn't he? Look at that.
Right, so he was racing in the 70s. I'd put him at 40 there.
OK.
So-
Well, look, back in the early 70s, everybody looked a lot older. So always add 20 years, because they always did look older.
So he's 20 there.
He's 78.
78 for Emerson Fittipaldi. By the way, he used to have a special crash helmet to fit his sideburns in.
74.
74. 78 is the right answer.
Jesus,
You're right again.
So good at this.
Thank you.
There's no cheaty business or anything, no?
I reckon he's Googling them on the side.
I'm not, look.
Very good. Very good.
Our fabulous
glad
computer
you-
is clear. Look at that.
Yeah, look
clear.
at this.
Wow.
Really fancy computer.
Yeah.
Good job you said about that. I was going to put him at 97.
Well, look, see, whenever there's one for the early set, there's two rules that we can play in this game. Golfers will always look older, and
They've been outside.
pictures from the 1970s and 60s always had about 20 years, because they always look older.
They always look old.
OK.
Right, let's go with another one. Here we go. Here we go again. Next one. Who could this possibly...
It's Will Carling.
It's Will Carling, England's youngest rugby captain at the age of 22. I was at his first wedding. Did you know that?
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
Who did he have a fling with? Was it Diana?
Well, that was the word, because I was very good friends with his then wife. But that was
Gosh.
He was actually he wasn't. He was delivering shirts to Kensington Palace.
I see.
Oh,
yes.
right,
As you do. As you.
How old is Will Carling today?
Will Carling, I think he is 63.
63 for Will Carling. He's in the ballpark, but he's not there. So come on, Ellie. Yeah.
50.
50. 59 is the right answer. So it's 1-1 going into the final.
1-1. I mean, you don't talk about helping along
So
the way.
competitive. The final set.
Yeah.
Could it be a tennis? Oh, it is. It's a tennis player, US Open winner,
I like
1979 and 1981. Wimbledon semi-finalist, 79 and 1980. She was 15 when she came on the scene.
I don't know. Why do I want to say Mary Austin? It's not
Tracy Austin. Very good.
Tracy Austin.
Very
Well
good.
done,
It's Tracy
well done.
Austin. You're thinking of her sister. So Tracy Austin. There were clues there, as in the dates when they...
Yes,
and by the way,
I wasn't
feel free to
listening.
play at home.
Oh, OK.
How old is Tracy Austin today?
When did she win?
80.
Right?
79, 81, that's all late 70s, early 80s, but she was young at the time.
Yeah, so she...
Are you doing the math?
I'm trying to do the math.
She's 67.
67 for Tracy Austin.
65.
62 is the answer.
I was
62.
closest.
It's a draw.
Yeah, but people will not realise that Paul Coy is pointing up and down to you, going...
Only just... I don't usually do that. It was only...
I needed help, because you've won the last 10 rounds and I'm absolutely hopeless.
I
So
got
thank you,
one on the
Coity.
You did get one on the nose.
I got Fittipaldi on the
You got the sideburns. By the way, his sideburns are 75 years old today.
Very
anyway.
good. And you probably still won, even with all that help.
Yeah.
Me.
Excellent.
Thanks, Coity.
Paul, thank you very
Good
much
game,
indeed.
as someone said once many years ago. Yeah.
Game.
Do stay with us. We're going to be going through the papers in just a few moments.
I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
It's about Generation Z spending 6 hours a day online. Generation Z, which age group is that?
16 to 24.
OK, great.
Now, this could explain why there's 1 million young people aged between 16 and 24.
100%.
Not working.
Work.
Yeah.
And I did a TV show and we're talking about it, and the lefty person I was on with was making excuses for the fact that we've got 9 million people unemployed. And this woman, this mum, rang in and she was hilarious. And I thought she was going to have a go at me. She said, Carol Malone. I thought, here we go, another one. And she goes, you are absolutely right. She said, I've just thrown my son out of the house, who's 24. She said, my husband and I, she said, we worked all our lives, 2 jobs, to get him to college, to get him to a private school. Yeah. She said, he hasn't worked a day.
No.
And his attitude was, why should I? And you think, and she said he spends all day online.
On his phone.
All he's
Because
doing.
we would have gone to get a job because we were bored. And the trouble is, Jonathan, the younger generation are never, ever bored because the algorithms keep them stimulated.
Well, the dopamine hits keep coming. I think it's actually a problem for all of us. Yeah. You know, now for anyone, if you just have a moment to yourself, a lot of people of all ages, what do we reach for? We reach for our phones, particularly for those. Obviously, if we're with a friend, we'll talk to them.
Your age group, you're not talking about...
I know that I've spoken to a lot of people who are in their 50s and 60s who also will just, you know, if they have a free month on the tube or whatever, they'll just look at their phone and read. And it's actually terrifying because on the iPhone every Monday it tells you how much time you spent on your phone the previous week, and it's
How much for you?
On average per day?
Fair few hours. I mean, a lot of that will be work.
What's the ballpark? Oh, more than 5?
Occasionally 5. Yeah.
Well,
better things to do.
Spending 6 hours a day.
Do you never read a book?
Well, that'll be at night time.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's papers time.
No, it isn't.
Oh, it's
actually,
not.
no. It's in the run-up to Christmas Day, of course. She's just not religious enough for my liking. It's our very special...
I actually am very holy, and you know that.
I do know that. It's our very special Advent calendar. And here is day 12.
The GB News Advent Calendar. Day 12.
Hello, my name is Marjorie, and I'm a minister in the north of England. Advent is a season of hopeful waiting, anticipation and preparation. I wonder what you are hoping for this Christmas. As we watch the news across our world, it can be hard not to feel hopeless. Who can fix the state of our world today? Hundreds of years beforehand, speaking of the birth of Jesus Christ, the prophet Isaiah said this: "He will swallow up death in victory, and the Lord God will wipe away tears from all of their faces." We live this side of history with the incredible reality of the fulfillment of this prophecy in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. If Advent is about looking back with wonder, it is also about looking forward to the return of Jesus Christ. And so we continue to wait. And we are all too aware that this will be the prayer of many people. There is sickness and suffering and sadness, that one day He will wipe every tear from their face. But at this Advent time, we know the end of the story. The message of Jesus Christ is just this, that he is strength for today and bright hope for tomorrow.
Wonderful.
That's going to be a nice one, isn't it?
If you want to catch up with any of our Advent messages, then you can do. Go to gbnews.com/Advent.
Well, joining us now to go through the papers this morning is Renee Honderkamp and Susie Stride. Good to see you both. Susie, let's start with this news, shall we? Saudi Arabia to host the 2034 World Cup. What do you make of it?
I mean, it's just baffling, isn't it? It's almost like something out of a movie, you know, like, I mean, there was no vote, you know, but also we're talking a country where human rights abuses, you know, women seen as second-class citizens, the media's muzzled, you know, authorities mass executions. I mean, I'm just like, I'm not astounded by this because we know that FIFA is awfully corrupt, but I'm really interested in what the Times is saying, that if little more than 6 countries decided, no, we're not going to have any of this, we're sick of it, because it's going to mess up the Premier League, then that's it. They're done for. And I don't understand why we don't just do this.
Just
you know?
pull out.
Just pull out.
Yeah.
You know, let's save the future of football. Why should we put up with this?
It's all about the money, though, isn't it, Renee?
It is, and that's why people aren't pulling out, because it's all about the money. I'm sure there are lots of, you know, little presents that are being passed to people. The fact that nobody bid against Saudi Arabia for this is telling in itself. Why didn't they bid against them? And look, I agree with Susie. I don't agree it's the most important story in the world, but I do agree with Susie that it's very odd that Saudi Arabia is allowing to make itself look like a major, important and absolutely virtuous country on the sporting scene, because this is not the only sport, and it is using sport to do that. And I think we do need to ask questions about that.
Yeah. OK, in the Times, Renee, we had another big farmers' protest yesterday in the capital. There's more to come, so we're told. No one's listening. Well, none of the people in Westminster are listening.
Well, they're going to have to listen.
The country's listening.
The country's listening. I think the countries in the main are on their side.
Oh, yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
listening. I'm on their side. What people don't seem to realise is if one of us has to pay inheritance tax on a family home that's been left to us in a will, we don't have to sell our business or a chunk of our business or move out of our home to do that. The farmers actually live on their businesses, and to sell off a bit of their farm will crucify them and make them non-viable. We need food. We have a problem with our food security as it is. We need to actually be supporting the farmers, not destroying their businesses, unless you take the view that people want to destroy farms because they don't want us eating meat, and this is an easy way to do it.
Susie?
Yeah, I mean, look, I actually was in central London yesterday, so I was seeing all these tractors go down, and you have to, you know, they're doing a very good job.
Why isn't the government listening, though?
I think there's a few things here. I think, look, Keir Starmer is saying, look, we're about to pump $5 billion into farming over the next 2 years, which is a record amount.
Yeah, but that doesn't help.
But I think, you know, look, there's a few things, isn't there? Look, we're in a difficult economic climate. They're having to make savings in different places. I understand this is a very contentious issue, and I think they possibly have got the threshold wrong. However, I was listening to someone else commentate on this a couple of days ago on your show, and I think he was pointing out, well, why don't, you know, other, you know, like builders companies and whatever, why do they pay that tax, and why don't farmers? Why are other businesses?
And I think it must lie.
Well, you know, they're contributing to the economy in different ways. You know, electricians, you know, that's important. You know, there are other people that do other jobs, that have other businesses that are paying their tax, and I think that is a very. How do you square that? How do we say that this group are more important than that group?
Well, because it's about land. I think it's because it's land more than food. It's the fact that this is. It's a whole host of money in the land which is never realised.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
it's a point. It's pie in the sky money.
Well, look, I think there's a couple of things. I think someone has pointed out that I think where this, you know, may get tricky is obviously those MPs that are in rural constituencies. But I don't know whether the government are going to budge on this. The only thing they may do is possibly change the threshold. But like I said, I think that is an important argument.
What they're going to do, actually, ironically, is in trying to solve what they say is a problem, i.e. wealthy people buying up farmland, is they're actually going to release farmland into the hands of wealthy people. If that's what they want to do, it's really simple. If it's a working farm, then leave it alone. Yeah. Simple as that.
Yeah. So it's really not difficult. But so what they're going to do about it, I don't know.
Susie, let's have a look at Lord Timpson, shall we? He's having conversations about the public sector hiring more ex-prisoners.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is fascinating. I think this is a really good argument for why we don't just want people that have been in the political bubble their whole life making policy decisions. This is a man who has committed 25 years of his life. He's been passionate about this issue, and obviously in his own company employed lots of ex-prisoners himself. And basically what they're saying is people are coming out of prisons better what do you want to call it? Better offenders than better citizens, and we can't have that because it's leading to 80% reoffending rates. And so it's really interesting, some of the things he's talking about. He's talking about we've got to deal with addiction, we've got to deal with mental health issues. You can't just release people and they've not got a job, they've not got any housing, because they're just going to offend and go straight back in. But he's also talking about inmates training prison officers, which when you hear it first of all sounds really controversial, but actually what they're talking about is that insider information, you know. So I think it's fascinating.
Yeah. And I do think it's this this vicious circle, isn't it? That they come out of prison, they can't get a job because no one wants to give a job to an ex-offender. So if we could actually... We've got enough vacancies in this country that we need to fill. If somebody being released from prison was conditional upon the job that we give them, they don't have to go and find one, we give them a job and they have to keep it, we actually try and break that circle. So I think Timpsons have done this themselves over the years by employing ex-prisoners, and I think actually that is one place where we could really start and make a change very easily. Could do that today.
And it's a proven method that works, isn't it? I mean, 10% of their employees are former convicts, and I mean, if you spent any time in a Timpson, it's good service.
Yeah, exactly. They've done well, and I think he is getting to grips with this, and then obviously they're building 4 new prisons, which is important because obviously prison capacity is in a really crisis place. But again, I think this is a really good argument for having people that have worked in industry, that understand, that have got good solutions, being in the right place and making those decisions, as opposed to people in a political bubble.
But the issue, but with also there's the issue with housing as well, which is a huge issue because a lot of people don't want to, rent a place to a former prisoner.
Yeah.
And it all depends on the conviction and all the rest of it. It does, but it's why we need to be training people in prison to come out and lead a productive life.
To build houses.
Exactly.
Well, there you go. Right, you two, it's been good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Now we'll have a little look at the weather, shall we, with Honor, because it was colder this morning.
Was it?
Did it feel like that?
No, I can't say I noticed, but let's get the full forecast.
Get the full forecast.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. So it's another grey and cloudy day ahead, likely to see some patchy rain and drizzle at times, and temperatures really struggling under cloudier skies. So a grey start for many of us, those outbreaks of rain and drizzle just starting to creep into eastern areas, moving their way inland through the course of the day. Should stay largely dry across western parts of England and Wales. Still a cloudy picture here though. The best of the brightness likely across northeastern parts of Scotland, western parts of Northern Ireland, where we may see some brighter spells, but in general temperatures really struggling under those cloudier skies, highs of between 8 to 10 Celsius in the far southeast. So to end the day then, there's still going to be plenty of cloud, quite cloudy across western parts of Scotland, but there will be some clearer spells across the far north, inland areas of Scotland too, but that's where it's going to turn particularly chilly overnight, and we may start to see some freezing fog patches develop too. Some clearer skies just to the west of Northern Ireland, but overall the bulk of the country seeing a very cloudy end to the day. Outbreaks of rain and drizzle still feeding their way into western parts of the country too. And then overnight, we don't really see much change. That cloud is going to stick around. That's going to keep things fairly mild. Still those outbreaks of rain and drizzle continuing. We may still see some clearer spells once again across parts of Northern Ireland, parts of northeast Scotland, but turning chilly here. And as I say, under those clear skies, we may start to see some fog, perhaps freezing fog patches develop by the morning. But elsewhere, fairly cloudy, and after a fairly mild night too, it is going to be another cloudy picture as we head into the end of the week. Rain and drizzle continuing, perhaps being a bit more widespread compared to Thursday. A few more western areas seeing those outbreaks of rain and drizzle. And once again, the best of the brightness, eastern parts of Northern Ireland, northeastern parts of Scotland, but to the northwest, some longer spells of rain and starting to turn quite blustery here too. And highs once again of around 7 to 8 Celsius.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. There are delays of up to 2 hours to Stena Line and an hour to P&O Irish Sea sailings at Care and Ryan, with lorries heading to the port being parked up at Castle Kennedy Airfield. The Port of Holyhead's closed for emergency repairs. Buses replaced trains again today between Llandudno and Blaenau Ffestiniog, between Swansea and Shrewsbury. From Norfolk into Suffolk, the A47 is closed southbound, heading away from Great Yarmouth towards Lowestoft after an accident last night. There are delays of up to 4 hours to Stena Line sailings between Fishguard and Rosslare. The M4 from Wiltshire into Berkshire is closed eastbound from junction 15 east of Swindon to 14 at Hungerford because of a spillage of hydraulic fluid, with delays as you divert. Train services into and out of Marylebone Station in London are suspended because of a signalling problem. In Kent, the A2 is closed each way off the A20 at Dover after an accident and fuel spill. And in Cornwall, train services are suspended between Penzance and Truro and Falmouth Docks because of a power failure.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British giveaway. Good luck.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Good morning. Sara Sharif was failed.
Those are the words of the Children's Commissioner as the parents of the 10-year-old were found guilty of her murder.
Serious questions, of course, being asked now as to how her father was given shared custody of her, despite it being known that he abused her siblings for years.
Angela Rayner will press ahead with plans to prioritise house building in areas of the Green Belt, insisting there is no alternative to large-scale development in the countryside around big cities. A little earlier, we spoke to the Shadow Secretary of State for Housing, Kevin Hollinrake.
What I'm concerned about with these rules is that they're really going to drive a coach and horses, a bulldozer, if you like, through local concerns about where they're going to be built and how they're going to be built.
The Prime Minister is going to meet the European Council President in Number 10 today, holding talks on defence cooperation with the EU.
Thousands of veterans who were ejected from the military because of their sexual orientation or gender identity will be able to receive up to £70,000 each in compensation to correct historic wrongs. That's a 50% rise to the financial recognition scheme.
Are you going to be cooking Christmas on a budget? We're going to be talking to TV chef Rosemary Schrager, who's going to have the very best tips for saving you money and still eating well.
Hello there, good morning. Another cloudy and grey day ahead with some rain and drizzle at times. Some brighter weather too. I'll be here later with all the details.
It's just gone 9 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Well, let's start with that news about Sara Sharif, should we? That awful case of the 10-year-old who was murdered, and after years of what prosecutors called horrific abuse, 3 members of her family have been found guilty over her death.
Yes, her father and her stepmother were convicted of murder, while her uncle was found guilty of allowing her to die.
Well, she suffered unimaginable violence, with the conviction sparking calls for urgent reform in child protection.
Well, following the verdict, the Children's Commissioner said the law must change, that children who are suspected victims of abuse cannot be home educated.
Earlier, we talked to the CEO and founder of Freedom from Abuse, Marilyn Hawes.
Said he legally punished his daughter. This is not legal in the UK. And I'm wondering, and I did read a report by Will Forster, the MP for Woking, who said also, were there cultural sensitivities in this case? And we've got to stop this. We have laws in the UK, and the homeschooling, there are some excellent homeschooling schoolers out there, but this is where abusive parents do hide away. But also, just take a look at homeschooling. How do we know the children are receiving the adequate education? But there should be a registration, there should be checks, just as there is within the education system itself. And then we go on to the family courts. Well, the family courts are supposed to be there for the voice of the child to be heard. Well, the voice of the child isn't heard. What's heard are very often social workers who have been manipulated by abusive parents to let the child, and this is what happened in this case, the social worker recommended, even though the social worker knew this man had a history of violence, recommended to the court that go back to the father. This is nonsense. The family courts are a shambles, I can tell you that now. Time and again, they are failing. But everyone has got blood on their hands here. I do not believe the neighbours didn't hear, because here I have a report that says neighbours heard smacking and yelling, as did other neighbours. They were known to be a concern, but no one bothered to phone the police or social services. Now, the neighbours, now I was a teacher in a school, as you know. I personally would have taken, against all the policies, I would have taken that child to the hospital myself if I had any instinct that there is something fundamentally wrong here, and there was. So you've got people that don't speak out, you've got family courts that are not fit for purpose, you've got homeschooling that needs another review. It is just shocking. And, people have got to forget some of these policies and multi-agencies. There's too many cooks in the kitchen.
I think the Daily Mail sums this up so well this morning, saying little Sara let down by everyone who was supposed to protect her. And the big question at the top, why does this keep on happening?
That is the question. Time and time again, there's a big case like this, and it always gets the headlines, and then everyone says that things need to change, needs to be a review. But what worries me, I tell you what worries me, is, massive case. But for every big case, there's going to be a load of smaller cases that don't make it to the papers, don't make it on the TV and the radio. Perhaps it doesn't result in a tragic death, but just ongoing abuse, and people are still slipping through the net.
Yeah. And social services, those social workers who are working so very hard, but some of them have 150, 200 children under their own care. So, you can see, unfortunately, how this can happen, because they are overrun with cases, and it's difficult to spot sometimes when awful things like this are happening behind closed doors.
It's things like this we need to think about a lot more often, I think, and bear these things in mind. If we become aware of anything that's going awry, we've got to step forward and do something.
Well, let's go to Westminster now, shall we, and speak to Matthew Pennyhook, who joins us now from College Green. Good to see you this morning, Minister. Look, I know that you're here to talk about the housing brief, but we are just speaking about Sara Sharif, the most horrific case, I'm sure you agree, let down by everyone supposed to protect her, the courts, the police, the social services, teachers. Reports in the papers today that 15 chances were missed to stop her being savagely murdered by her father and her stepmother. Why does this keep happening in this country? What can we do to protect other children from dying in such a brutal way?
Well, you're absolutely right that this young girl, who obviously had such a zest for life, was subject to the most unspeakable abuse by those who should have been caring for her. And it's right that the father and stepmother have been brought to justice. I'd say on the wider point, we know that the system needs reform. The government are already acting to ensure that children don't fall through the cracks. We're introducing landmark reforms to overhaul children's social services. We're also looking at how we can introduce greater protections for those who are homeschooled to ensure that that route can never conceal abuse. But we accept absolutely that reforms need to happen, and we'll be learning the lessons from this case, because you're right, it's not an isolated incident. Too many children suffer abuse and violence at the hands of those who should be caring for them.
No, well, let's see what you can bring in. Let's hope it makes a difference.
Yeah.
On this house building thing, I mean, there's a lot of hoo-ha over these plans to change planning regulation. You know, building on brownfield sites. Well, yes, fair enough. Building on grey field sites, which is this new thing. There is concern that this is just bypassing local residents, bypassing the concerns that a lot of people will have about building in their area. Is the Labour government just determined to plough ahead with this building without listening to people?
We are determined to tackle the housing crisis, to boost economic growth by meeting our Plan for Change milestone of 1.5 million new homes in this Parliament. But I would take issue with the fact that your assertion that we're just bypassing local communities. We want local communities involved early on with the production of local plans, because local plans, local development plans, are the best way for individual communities to shape development in their areas and to come to a view as to how housing should be developed and where it should go. But it does have to be a conversation about how and where it goes rather than whether it happens at all. And that's because we've got an acute and entrenched housing crisis in England. And you will all know, your viewers will know, what that crisis means for people out there. It means 1.3 million people languishing on social housing waiting lists. It means a generation locked out of home ownership. And to our shame as a nation, it means nearly 160,000 homeless children will be living in temporary accommodation this Christmas. So the status quo is not sustainable. We won't accept it. We are going to push local authorities across the country to help us get Britain building again. But we want that to be done via local plans which communities contribute to.
A large part of this plan, as Stephen says, is building on grey belt land. How are you defining that?
So we put forward a definition of grey belt land in our consultation in July, and we'll be announcing a final definition to the House of Commons later today. But what we are trying to get at with grey belt land is the fact that we know that there are lots of parcels of land within the green belt which are poorly performing, which are low quality. So they might be previously developed land, maybe disused petrol stations, abandoned car parks, might just be very low quality scrub land. And what we're saying to local areas is, meet our mandatory higher housing targets. In the first instance, try to do that through previously developed brownfield land. But where you can't do that through brownfield land, yes, please review your green belt. Please look to release from the green belt the most low quality performing land so we can get those homes built. And really importantly, and I think this is something that we've got to really stress to communities out there, what we are saying is when any land will be released through the green belt, we are going to ensure that golden rules apply, which will see more additional housing, affordable housing come forward on those sites, better infrastructure and better access to green and open space. So there's a clear quid pro quo here for communities. If development has to come forward on the green belt, you will receive more public benefit from it. You can be more confident that the homes that will be built will meet local need rather than being, for example, gated executive homes.
OK, meeting local need is important. How do you deal with them with what they... Because this has got to be multi-pronged, hasn't it? A multi-pronged approach the OBR saying, you know, over the period of the next few years, we're going to have net migration of 1.5 million. You're saying you're going to build 1.5 million new houses over the course of the Parliament. Well, that's all well and good. Unless you significantly cut down on net migration, it's not going to help. It'll make enough of a difference, is it?
Well, I think they're two slightly distinct but interrelated issues. We do need to bring down levels of legal as well as illegal migration. We've been very clear about that fact. We're taking steps to ensure that is the case already. But we also have to build the homes that our people need in this country. And 1.5 million new home target, we think, is essential in terms of the scale of the challenge we face to doing that. But I think it's a bit too simplistic, if I'm honest, to just read across current legal and migration figures and say that we are not bringing forward enough homes. We know that the majority of new homes built by developers go to existing UK nationals. We know when it comes to social housing, for example, that there are already in most parts of the country local residency rules in place. So it's not the case that I think it's partly the sort of assertion you're putting to me that all the new homes we will build will go to people that aren't UK nationals. But we have got to have a housing system that is geared towards meeting housing need in full across the country. And I think that is an emerging point of difference between us and the Conservatives and some local leaders out there who say, no, we don't think there's any need for us to meet these targets. We're sort of happy with the way things are. We're not happy with the way things are. As I said, the housing crisis is acute, it's entrenched, it's blighting lives, and it's holding our economy back. And the planning reforms we're introducing today are not the whole solution, but they're a big part of the solution to ensuring we're boosting housing supply and unlocking economic growth.
Can I ask you about the farmers' protest yesterday? Thousands of farmers down in London, hundreds of tractors outside Westminster and outside the Houses of Parliament. Did you go down and speak to the farmers?
I didn't. I heard them outside my office, if I'm honest, but I've been furiously at work in putting the final touches to the planning reforms that we'll announce in the House of Commons later today.
Yeah, but is the government going to listen to what these farmers are saying? This isn't going away.
Well, we understand the concerns that have been expressed by farmers, but we think the proposals we've put forward and taken forward on inheritance tax are fair. They will only affect a very small minority of farms across the country, and they are an essential part of trying to fix the foundations, put our public finances on a firm footing, given the dire inheritance that we picked up when we came into office, including that £22 billion black hole. So we did have to make some difficult decisions, but we think this is one of the right decisions we've made as part of a budget which is, as I've said, intended to fix those foundations, help the country move on, help us get into the business of national renewal, taking forward the various milestones we've outlined as part of our plan for change, including that very stretching but we think achievable target of building 1.5 million new homes in this Parliament.
OK, Matthew Pennycook, we are running out of time with you, I'm afraid, but thank you very much for your time this morning. Thank you.
It's... I'd love to know what you think about that. We're just looking at the views now. He's got to... I have some sympathy with the Minister in that this isn't his area of expertise and he knows what the party line is. I'm not saying he might believe exactly what he's saying. He also might not. And it's when you get these ministers who then move out of their job, who then say, well, actually, it wasn't a good idea. I cannot see how this is not going to change. There's got to be a climb down on the farmers' situation.
Yeah, and if so few farms are impacted, which we keep hearing, we just heard there from Matthew Pennycook, the same line, very few farms going to be affected by this. Well, why then is the strength of feeling so strong amongst farmers? Are you saying they don't understand the policy?
Yeah, I think they understand it.
Or do you think you know better than farmers?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a strike and then we're all going to suffer. And I think but the vast majority of us will be saying, well, fair enough.
It won't escalate like we've seen in Europe, potentially. Let us know what you think. We see loads of views coming in already. gbnews.com/you'll say.
Right, it's Advent time, of course. Let's get the latest from our Advent calendar.
The GB News Advent Calendar. Day 12.
Hello, my name is Marjorie and I'm a minister in the north of England. Advent is a season of hopeful waiting, anticipation and preparation. I wonder what you are hoping for this Christmas. As we watch the news across our world, it can be hard not to feel hopeless. Who can fix the state of our world today? Hundreds of years beforehand, speaking of the birth of Jesus Christ, the prophet Isaiah said this: "He will swallow up death in victory, and the Lord God will wipe away tears from all of their faces." We live this side of history with the incredible reality of the fulfillment of this prophecy in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. If Advent is about looking back with wonder, it is also about looking forward to the return of Jesus Christ. And so we continue to wait. And we are all too aware that this will be the prayer of many people. There is sickness and suffering and sadness, that one day He will wipe every tear from their face. But at this Advent time, we know the end of the story. The message of Jesus Christ is just this, that He is strength for today and bright hope for tomorrow.
We're back on, darling.
Yes. Well, you can see all of our special Advent messages as Christmas approaches on gbnews.com/Advent.
She's already looking at Christmas drinks. That's what she was doing, ladies and gents, ahead of our breakfast lunch, Christmas party lunch thing next week.
We've been told we have to do 3 baby Guinnesses before any food touches the table. But I can't tell you how you make a baby Guinness. That's
well, I won't be drinking them.
Well, you won't. Irish cream coffee liqueur is what it is.
Oh, there you go. I'll have 3 espressos. Thank you very much indeed. Call me dull. Right, time for our big giveaway. Before, though, we let you know how to enter, hear about this one.
Yes.
Winning Christmas this year. It's Cliff and Julie from Essex.
My name is Cliff. And my name is Julie. And we won £25,500 gift voucher and a GB News goodie bag.
When my phone rang, I was on cloud 9. I couldn't even finish my job.
Amazing, just the best feeling ever.
We can get everything we want. We can buy presents for friends and family.
I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it. But we're glued to GB News. It's the best station ever.
Merry Christmas, GB News!
We love you!
And we love you, Cliff and Julie. The highlights of the breakfast programme.
It's been fantastic.
I think we should get them on every day just to give us a motivational message.
Yeah, I think we will. Look, if you want to win £50,000 in tax-free cash, it's all up for grabs. Here's how you enter.
Imagine getting the call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Lee Anderson's Real World, Fridays from 7 p.m.
Last orders at the bar, and I'm joined by Geordie Shore star Ricky Guanaccio. Have I said that right? Is that Italian?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Italian, your parents Italian?
Is it? The pronunciation was pretty much perfect.
Yeah, well, there you go. So, look, mate, Geordie Shore, I've never watched it, mate, so I do apologise about that. But I know these reality TV shows are making big stars out of the people, making you famous, making you loads of money. Is it worth it?
For me personally, yeah. It's been a hell of a career. Been a hell of a lot of fun doing it. Ups and downs, but first and foremost, money-wise, yeah.
That's good. So people stopping in the street, you being famous, wanting the autograph and all. How do you cope with that, Ricky?
Well, when we first started doing the show, I mean, we got our show off the back of Jersey Shore in America. We never expected the fame that we got, and, you know, being one of the biggest reality TV shows in the UK and now the world, you know, it's in 150 odd countries worldwide. Wow. It's pretty crazy. It's when you're living in houses. I mean, for example, Geordie Shore and Love Island's probably the same as well. When you're living in villas and you're living in houses, the arguing side sort of plays on your mind. You've got to deal with all that. You know, it's a hard place to be. It's a pressure cooker.
You're living in one of these villas, Ricky, or one of these houses. Do you ever wake up one morning and think, "What am I doing here?"
When I first started, yes. Yeah. Now, I love it.
Yeah?
Yeah, I don't mind all the, you know, there's no emotion connecting me now with film, and it's kind of like I go in there, it's fun, or it's, you know, it's dramatic, whatever it may be.
Have you ever worked behind a bar?
No.
No?
Yeah, for not a long period of time. My mum and dad had a...
Well, I can
definitely messed this one up.
Yeah, I can actually believe that you've never worked behind a bar.
Yeah, so my parents sacked us when I worked in the restaurant.
Well, obviously, I mean, you wouldn't get a job here with a pint like that, would you?
Do you want it?
No, mate, no.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Right, coming up at 9:30, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner have got their show. Good morning to you, Andrew.
Morning. Good morning.
What are you going to be focusing on?
Well, we'll be talking a lot, actually, about the reaction to the farmers yesterday.
Yeah.
A brilliantly conducted protest, peaceful, in London, Cardiff, York, all over the country, and I think they're getting real momentum and real support.
So much public support.
Really
they're
is.
being beeped at.
And where were the government
Cheers
ministers? Did we see one of them out there talking to the farmers? Not one.
No.
We saw Nigel Farage, we saw some Tory MPs. I don't think we saw Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader.
Which is crazy. She should have been there cheering them on.
Open goal.
Yeah. And
Yes.
she's a rural constituency
She is.
MP
She's
as
the
well.
MP for Saffron Walden in Essex. So
What I don't understand with this is the government doesn't seem to be listening.
Well,
They're going to have to listen at some point. If they stop food supplies, which the country would cheer them on for.
They're responsible for about 54% of our food, our farmers, and it's grisly. They've really misread it, haven't they?
Totally.
Again.
They've just not got it.
No, they're too urban.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Andrew, lots on that then, and all power to your elbow. We'll see you in a few minutes.
See you then, and we will see you tomorrow at 6 a.m. But first, let's have a look at the weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. So it's another grey and cloudy day ahead, likely to see some patchy rain and drizzle at times, and temperatures really struggling under cloudier skies. So a grey start for many of us, those outbreaks of rain and drizzle just starting to creep into eastern areas, moving their way inland through the course of the day. Should stay largely dry across western parts of England and Wales. Still a cloudy picture here though. The best of the brightness likely across northeastern parts of Scotland, western parts of Northern Ireland, where we may see some brighter spells, but in general temperatures really struggling under those cloudier skies, highs of between 8 to 10 Celsius in the far southeast. So to end the day then, there's still going to be plenty of cloud, quite cloudy across western parts of Scotland, but there will be some clearer spells across the far north, inland areas of Scotland too, but that's where it's going to turn particularly chilly overnight, and we may start to see some freezing fog patches develop too. Some clearer skies just to the west of Northern Ireland, but overall the bulk of the country seeing a very cloudy end to the day. Outbreaks of rain and drizzle still feeding their way into western parts of the country too. And then overnight, we don't really see much change. That cloud is going to stick around. That's going to keep things fairly mild. Still those outbreaks of rain and drizzle continuing. We may still see some clearer spells once again across parts of Northern Ireland, parts of northeast Scotland, but turning chilly here. And as I say, under those clear skies, we may start to see some fog, perhaps freezing fog patches develop by the morning. But elsewhere, fairly cloudy, and after a fairly mild night too, it is going to be another cloudy picture as we head into the end of the week. Rain and drizzle continuing, perhaps being a bit more widespread compared to Thursday. A few more western areas seeing those outbreaks of rain and drizzle. And once again, the best of the brightness, eastern parts of Northern Ireland, northeastern parts of Scotland, but to the northwest, some longer spells of rain and starting to turn quite blustery here too. And highs once again of around 7 to 8 Celsius.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. There are long delays at the port of Cairn Ryan, with delays of up to 2 hours to Stena Line and an hour to P&O Irish Sea sailings, with lorries parking up towards the port at Castle Kennedy Airfield. The port of Holyhead's closed for repairs. Buses replaced trains again today between Plano, Festiniog and Llandudno, also between Swansea and Shrewsbury. From Norfolk into Suffolk, the A47's closed southbound, heading away from Great Yarmouth towards Lowestoft after an accident last night. There are delays of up to 4 hours to Stena Line sailings between Fishguard and Rosslare. The M4 from Wiltshire into Berkshire's closed eastbound from junction 15 east of Swindon to 14 at Hungerford because of a spillage of hydraulic fluid, causing long delays as you divert. Train services into and out of Marylebone Station in London are suspended because of a signalling problem, and in Kent the A2 is closed each way off the A20 at Dover for repairs after a fuel spill.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
This is Miss Universe fans hailing the end of wokeness and crediting the Trump effect after a biological woman, there's still some of them around apparently, has won the 2024 crown. She's Miss Denmark, because obviously the last decade, you know, it's just been a beast transgender smurfs from Papua New Guinea. They're the only people allowed to win any beauty contest, you know what I mean?